Some of the greatest memes throughout the years came when foreign language songs hit the English-speaking world. First example that probably comes to your mind is Gangnam Style, which honestly is hard to believe was already 8 years ago. And there's been so many others throughout the years, like The Seventh Element or Numou. But it's been a while since I heard of anybody speak of one of the first foreign language songs to become a meme in the English-speaking internet. That song is Daler Mendy's Tunak Tunak Tun, which had a music video that was all over the place in the early 2000s. I took off for obvious reasons, with its goofy, easily imitated dance moves, its Sega Saturn type CG that reminds me of Myst, and several color-coded Daler Mendys getting into mischief like some sort of Sikh Power Rangers. And the story of how and why the video was made, as well as Daler Mendy's career following it, are full of all kinds of interesting twists and turns. So for this episode of Tales from the Internet, let's talk about Tunak Tunak Tun. This video is sponsored by Helix. Helix makes premium mattresses and bedding, custom fit to your needs and shipped right to your door. I've had my Helix mattress now for about a year and a half. I'm still having some of the best sleep of my life. When I had first gotten my Helix mattress, I had been complaining about neck pain and back pain, and since I've been on it, it is yet to return. It's really easy to get a Helix mattress of your own. You just take their sleep quiz, which helps determine what mattress is right for you based on your preferences and sleeping style. Since I'm a side sleeper who likes a soft mattress, they gave me the Sunset. And if you're nervous about buying a mattress from the internet, Helix gives you a 100 nights of sleep trial. That's more than 3 months. And if you don't like the mattress, they'll pick it up right from your door and issue a full refund. If you do like it, each Helix mattress comes with a 10-year warranty. And you don't have to spend a lot of money right up front with Helix's financing and payment plans. Just click the link below or go to helixsleep.com/wang. You'll get up to $200 off your Helix Sleep mattress, as well as 2 free pillows. Of all the meme songs that we've had throughout the years, Daler Mendy's Tunak Tunak Tun is one of my favorites just because it's a good-ass song. I have absolutely no idea what he's saying, but I enjoy it all the same. I guess that's just a function of growing up with metal. You get used to the idea of liking a song even though you don't know what the words are. The vocals are just another thing you use to make noise happen. But it's not as if Tunak Tunak Tun made him either. Daler Mendy was an extremely popular musician in India well before the West ever heard of him, well before we got to see him descend from the skies as each element like some kind of Punjabi Planeteers. And as he told it on his website, Daler Mendy viewed the music video as kind of a fuck you to his critics. A few media houses came up with this analogy that Daler Mendy is super hit because he has pretty women in his videos. Daler Mendy decided to shut them up, and how? There was no woman in the video. It seems like kind of a strange criticism to me. I mean, yeah, sure, hot women sell, but they're kind of all over the place, and surely Daler Mendy wasn't the only one to have hot women in his music videos. And furthermore, I don't know about you, but me personally, my enjoyment of hot women, if I want to ogle hot women, the presence of a jolly, robust Indian man doesn't in any way elevate the experience or really even encourage it. But regardless, he had to go shut them up, so he goes and creates the first Indian music video to use blue screen technology, with the biggest budget to date of 25 million rupees. No women allowed, just 4 Daler Mendys. And actually, according to his website, there was supposed to be a 5th miniature Daler Mendy, but he didn't make it to the final cut because of time constraints. I never thought there would come a time in my life where I felt nostalgia for this caliber of CG. Like, it takes me back to a time where you'd see stuff that looked like that playing on ads for game design colleges on G4. It really does look like something out of Myst. Watch out, Daler, don't get trapped in a book. And sure enough, this amazing music video was enough to shut up Daler's critics. This song was a massive commercial success and basically solidified him as India's #1 pop star. And keep in mind, this is all going down in 1998, which I guess the legacy of Kane tier CG was a clue, but this was a long time before the Western world would ever even get a glimpse of this song. In fact, it's kind of murky when or how this song actually managed to bridge itself over into the English-speaking world because a lot of that stuff is simply not archived. Personally, I'm not 100% on it, but I'm pretty sure that the first place I saw it was on eBaum's World, which of course means it could have come from absolutely anywhere. but the earliest instance I've seen of someone memeing on it is from 2001. It was on a website called lordofdance.com, which has thankfully been archived in all of its fantastic Web 1.0 glory, featuring a guy named Danielle Gormley dancing. Tunak Tunak Tun is a classic that will not only stand the test of time, but will also stand the test of superglue. Go ahead, hang it from a steel girder, I dare you. Based on popular indie pop star Mendy's video. Click here to view the original. It emphasizes what was best about his work. It was really good, says the New York Tribunal. Wow, says Rolling Stone. Now with audio fixed. And note that the link that Danielle provided for the original music video goes to an English language website on Indian pop culture. If I had to guess, I'd say that this website, Teen Station, is probably how the video first made its way to an American audience. Danielle's interpretation of the video features him dancing to Mendy's song in a variety of outfits of his own, and several more of these parodies would pop up throughout the early to mid 2000s, reaching its peak at some point in 2006. Come on, how are you gonna call it the Caucasian edition and you got an Asian dude right there? Wait, is that a young wavy web surf? There was even a World of Warcraft parody that led to it actually being added into the game as an emote. And the phenomenon would take another turn in 2007. That was when a man named Mike Sutton, more popularly known as Buffalax, got to work on his YouTube channel. Buffalax would take Tunak Tunak Tun as well as a number of other Indian songs and songs from other countries and make videos of them with misheard lyrics. The series became so popular that people began to use the word Buffalax to describe this type of video. And granted, his Tunak Tunak Tun video wasn't as popular as some of his others. Personally, I enjoy his version of a different Mendy song, Shira Ra. But my favorite, of course, and the one you're probably the most familiar with, is Benny Lava. Unfortunately, a lot of Buffalax's work, along with his entire channel, is wiped from YouTube due to copyright issues. However, his entire library is available on the Internet Archive. Considering that Tunak Tunak Tun was released in 1998 and had its gradual ascent into memedom that lasted throughout the mid-2000s, it had perhaps the greatest sustained period of popularity experienced by any pop song. Memes just lasted longer in those days, but eventually they all fade away, and new meme songs just come and go and take its place throughout the years. Tunak Tunak Tun walked so that Gangnam Style could run. But while his profile wouldn't remain at the same heights as they were in the English-speaking world, in India he remained a star. He worked consistently throughout the decades, working on not only his own music, but several movie and television scores. Unfortunately, however, the next time much of the Western world would hear about him would be under much less positive circumstances. On March 16th of 2018, Mendy was sentenced to 2 years in prison for human trafficking charges. That's a hell of a crazy headline, and it wound up trending on Twitter that day, reacquainting us with Mendy in the worst way possible. But that being said, there is a lot of misinformation that's circulated around this story. Because you see, a lot of people have interpreted this news to mean that Mendy was involved somehow in sex trafficking, kidnapping, prostitution, like some kind of Indian Epstein. Sometimes in conversation when people remember him, they'll be like, hey, did you hear about how the Tunak Tunak Tun guy was involved in sex trafficking? And I think this idea circulates from the game of telephone we play where you see that headline, you don't read the article, so you don't really know what it's about, so you just remember it and tell people and eventually it becomes fact. So here's what actually happened. The case was brought up in 2003 against both Dollar and his brother Shamser Singh, who passed away in 2017. In the initial complaint, a man claimed to have paid them a massive sum of money in order to be brought to either the US or Canada as a part of their touring dance troupe. Once they got there, they would stay in the country illegally. Kind of like the illegal immigration version of when a local band plays a show and they have their friend grab a piece of gear and walk into the venue and they're like, oh yeah, he's crew. And according to the court documents, they were confirmed to have done this with 10 people in San Francisco and in New Jersey. And after the case was filed, 35 more people came forward and said they too paid them this massive sum of money and they too were never brought to the US. And while yeah, these are serious crimes, in my opinion, they don't really come close to approaching the level of what sex trafficking is. which of course, contrary to some people's understanding, is not something he was ever even accused of, let alone convicted of. In any case, Mendy was let out on bail and to my knowledge has never served any prison time for the sentence. He maintains his innocence, and after filing his appeal, the judge decided to suspend his 2-year sentence. And in the meantime, he has been busy. All throughout this time, he's continued to make music for films, and he's also been active on his YouTube channel, including a new series in which he plays his favorite songs from his home studio. Would you look at that golden throne? But anyway, that's the story of Mendy and Tunak Tunak Tun, a song that has an important place not just in music history, but in internet history. Purity Knight was an honors student who returned home to Mississippi in 1997 to attend university. She had spent the past several months traveling, first to Oregon and later to Israel, trying to get away and find herself after her sister's death in 1995. Unfortunately, her return home would lead her to the same fate, after being kidnapped and buried alive that spring. Her case would be documented as it unfolded on the website crimescene.com, where it reached a significant audience. Most notably, Corey Taylor, the vocalist of the band Slipknot, was so moved by the story that he would make reference to it in 2 of the tracks on the band's self-titled major label debut. However, the story's inclusion on the album would wind up putting the young band's future in jeopardy. So for this episode of Tales from the Internet, let's take a look at the story of Purity. Look at this drawing from Dave Correa back in the days of the Slipknot vs Limp Bizkit feud. I found that while researching this video, and honestly it has nothing to do with the topic, I just thought it was cool and it kind of took me back to a place in time. I used to see this drawing all the time on Slipknot fan sites, and I used to look at a lot of them because Slipknot was just like that important of a band for me when I was growing up. Like, that was my band. When that self-titled album came out, I hadn't heard anything like that before. That was the album that made me want to play in a band, an album that I would sit there and dub cassette tapes to give to my friends, even though, I probably shouldn't have done that, but I did it anyway. So when I saw that there was a digipack re-release of the album with even more tracks, I got that as soon as I could. Shout out to Sam Goody. Then I came home with it and I realized there's something kinda weird about it. 2 of the original tracks were missing. Tracks 8 and 9, Frail Limbs Nursery and Purity. Frail Limbs Nursery was just like a short interlude track with this creepy electronic sound and this haunting woman's voice talking. That track transitions into Purity, which is a song about a woman buried alive in a box. So I want to find out what's going on with these missing tracks, so I go on a bunch of different Slipknot fan sites, and I cannot understate how many Slipknot websites there were back in the day, many of which still actually exist and might make for a good Angel Fire stream. And on these websites, people are breaking down different Slipknot lyrics, trying to analyze them. My favorite of which is probably Eyeless. You can't see California without Marlon Brando's eyes. People had so many deep, allegorical explanations for what these words could possibly mean, and then it just turns out that it was something that Corey Taylor, the band's vocalist, heard a homeless guy say once and he thought it sounded cool. And then you have Prosthetics, which turns out to be a song influenced by the movie The Collector. Not the one that, came out after the album came out, the original one from the 60s. And as for the song Purity, well, this winds up being probably the most interesting of them all. You see, Purity relates to this old story that Corey had seen on the website crimescene.com. The kidnapping and murder of Purity Knight. At the time, this case was being investigated by Detective Anderson and Detective Armstrong of the Younapatofa Police Department. Purity Knight was the sister of Valerie Wilson, another girl from that county who had been murdered in 1995 and whose story was also covered by crimescene.com. After the murder, Purity moved to Oregon to attend Reed College. Then she moved to Israel as her interests changed before ultimately returning back to Mississippi to go to university there. That return would ultimately spell her doom. In March of 1997, Purity reported a stalking incident at her home. Unfortunately, the police weren't really able to do anything about it, and days later, she disappeared. It quickly becomes clear this was a kidnapping as the culprit begins to taunt her family and the police with creepy answering machine messages, torn pieces of maps, a ransom note, and ultimately Polaroid pictures of Purity being held captive in some sort of box. So the detectives do the obvious thing. Consult the users of the website to help them solve the case. They fill the website with all of the evidence, all of the clues, and real player interviews with witnesses and people associated with the case. And they added comment sections so people could discuss the case and ask detectives any questions they had. The internet, of course, was very helpful. Did you look at the retardation center? I don't think they call it that anymore. Oh wait, it's literally what it's called on the map. The suspect may have a family member that is a professional photographer. He may be using their Polaroid. Ah yes, Polaroids, the professional photographer's first weapon of choice. Hey, what if we use the website to trick the culprit? Well, I guess it's too late now that you said it on the website. Unfortunately, despite the best efforts of the internet sleuths, Purity Knight was found dead on June 9th, 1997, buried alive in a homemade coffin less than a mile from her home. She was given food and air through a secret passageway and kept alive for months. And what was more tragic was her nearly successful escape attempt. That July, after noticing some drawings by a 9-year-old, Dylan Hull, of what appeared to be the crime scene, a camp counselor contacted the sheriff's department. Upon investigation, it was discovered that the boy had come across Purity while she was still alive. She asked him to bring her some pens and paper, and when he returned with them, she wrote this note. Dave, I thought it was some kind of sick game, but now I'm going to die. If you can't do something, I know I will die. I am badly hurt. Please come and let me out. Dylan, the boy, can help you. Just come and let me out and we can talk. Hurry. Purity. This note, however, never made it to the police. On his way out of the woods, the boy was confronted by a strange man. The man convinced Dylan that he would deliver the note for him, but that note never made it to the police and ultimately was discovered tucked inside of a library book months later. On one of his visits, the boy also brought with him a toy tape recorder and got some audio of Purity speaking. This is the audio that's sampled on Slipknot's Frail Limbs Nursery. Ultimately, the trail of crumbs led to Ed Pierce, Purity's roommate's boyfriend who also attended the University of Mississippi. The police found irrefutable evidence that he was the culprit behind her kidnapping and ultimate death. And after a gunfight that sent Detective Anderson to the hospital, Ed was apprehended and put behind bars. It's a hell of a story, and I can understand why Corey felt so moved by it. So Slipknot's self-titled album comes out, and they really start to blow up very quickly. I remember them just in the course of a few months, opening up for Cold Chamber, and all of a sudden they're the band, headlining fucking everywhere. I remember being in school and there were so many of us wearing Slipknot shirts that some guy that didn't know the band asked us if Slipknot was some kind of brand. Then that digipack with the extra tracks comes out, and it seems like such an obvious move because it's like Slipknot Champion Edition. But then the regular version of the album is re-released, this time also missing the same tracks, Purity and Frail Limbs Nursery, and it's apparent that something's going on here. Well, as it turns out, crimescene.com had an issue with these songs. You see, they believe that Slipknot was infringing on their copyright. Copyright? How do you copyright a murder? What would the Younopatawpha County Sheriff's Office have to say about this? Wait a minute, where exactly is Younopatawpha? Younopatawpha County, pronounced is a fictional Mississippi county created by the American author William Faulkner, largely based upon and inspired by Lafayette County, Mississippi, and its county seat of Oxford, Mississippi, which Faulkner renamed Jefferson. Faulkner often referred to Younopatawpha County as my apocryphal county. So wait, does that also mean this gray person isn't a dead body? And this is not a page for People magazine? And this guy isn't a professor? Wait a minute, what's going on here? Is it real? Proving the reality of crime scene evidence files is something best done in a separate forum. Enter your email address to get a set of URLs describing the reality contained in these web pages. So the answer to whether or not this is real is just not yes. And really, the more you look at it, the more obvious it is that this is some kind of ARG, or more accurately, the internet version of one of those old mystery novels. The way the clues are curated in such a way that kind of begs the reader to solve the mystery. The way the public was invited in to interact with the detectives almost in like a 20 questions kind of way. how they would announce scheduled updates. I mean, in reality, murder mysteries don't really have a schedule. But all that being said, even if the songs were inspired by a fictional story, in my non-professional opinion, that still wouldn't make it copyright infringement. I mean, yeah, it's more complicated because they used the sample in Frail Limbs Nursery, but for purity, just using the character's name and some plot points that really are plot points that have existed in other stories before this one just doesn't seem like enough to me. But if I'm wrong, Veil Amaya needs to be real fucking careful. And this was reported a bunch of different ways at the time. Some sites said that the songs were removed as a preventive measure to keep the band from getting sued. Others said that the band did in fact get sued and they lost and they had to remove the songs as a result of it. But the truth, as it turns out, is a little bit different from both of these accounts. There doesn't appear to be any online records of the actual court proceedings regarding this case, but Corey Taylor clarified what happened during a Q&A session at one of his speaking engagements.
Basically, my fucking answer was, well, that song's been around for fucking 5 years. And now all of a sudden you're coming out of the woodwork saying that we ripped you off, which was horseshit, by the way. And that's why we got it back. We got that fucking song back eventually because we won. And I was very proud of that.
He goes on to describe a day where he gave testimony about this to a judge over the phone. The judge laughing as he describes what's going on in the lyrics. And he clarified that the actual lyrical content of the songs existed before he heard about the Purity story. Those lyrics were inspired by the movies Boxing Helena and The Collector. He insists that he only took the name of the song from the website. Ultimately, it turned into an ordeal where the case went to a bunch of different courts, and in the meantime, it was put on what he described as a temporary restraining order. Basically, either the band had to take the album off the shelves completely, or they just had to get rid of those two songs. It's a pretty obvious choice, thus the digipack and the re-release. And ultimately, Slipknot did win in the case of Purity, however, there has been no official release of Frail Limbs Nursery to this day. Purity, however, did appear for the first time since this controversy in 2005 on their 9.0 live album. And the studio version of the song returned on the 10th anniversary release of their self-titled album. As for crimescene.com, it actually still exists, and they now go through much greater lengths to make sure that everyone playing along with the mysteries knows that these are in fact works of fiction. But despite that, in the book Slipknot Inside the Sickness, Corey explains that in a way, he still feels like the story is real. I still think it's real. See, the thing, whether it's true or not, it's a real story that we read about, that fucked our whole world up. Can you imagine a girl being buried in a box and having all this lecherous bullshit drip down on her from this guy, and thinking that there is hope because this kid is taking some bizarre note to this guy he doesn't even know, thinking that you are holding on to the shirt of hope, and you wake up and you're dead and buried in the mud? They find a note about a week later shoved in a library book, for God's sake. It just hurts your head. It's a case of what is good and bad in people. The box alone is reason enough to be like, I can't stand to be fucking human. How could someone fucking do this to somebody? What is inside of us that is so fucking wrong? He had written quotes from Edgar Allan Poe and lots of fucked up things on the box. Ultimately, although this was undoubtedly a massive pain in the ass for the band at the time, it wound up being a piece of lore that made the band's story that much greater, and made sure that the band was intrinsically tied to the early internet. And although honestly Purity has never been one of my favorite Slipknot songs, I have to say that it's been stuck in my head the entire time I've been working on this video. So good thing they won, and I've just been listening to the thing over and over again. Eminem, Macklemore, Vanilla Ice. The images of many icons line the walls of the White Rapper Hall of Fame. Yet there's one legendary act that's conspicuous by their absence. 3 rap gods who came from the mean streets of Toccoa, Georgia and brought us such classics as Get Crunk, Haters, and True Pimpin'. I'm talking about Freeze, Blade, The Flame. This is the story of the Icy Hot Stuntaz. The Icy Hot Stuntaz were one of the greatest memes of 2001, and I was really surprised that when I was talking about making this video, a lot of people told me that they did not remember them. That's something that I gotta fix right now. The Icy Hot Stuntaz website, which was created sometime around April of 2001, begins by inviting you to click on the rap star you want to drool about. We've got the Blade. Don't get cut by the Blade. Yeah, you know this. Blade, the leader of the group and quite possibly the most dangerous person you have ever met. 2 years in state pen for armed robbery, 4 years in rehab, still on the yayo, and who knows what's next for this tight food. The Flame, your punk ass is gonna get burned by the Flame. Thought yeah wasn't a sucker? Flame, the fastest rapper on 4 wheels. This guy spends his time blowing away fools in his pimped out Firebird. Just kick out them Brembos. Stop yourself on a dime. In his past, Flame has done time for outrunning the 5-0 and cutting some punk sucker up. And freeze. His bio wasn't linked correctly and it goes to a page where they're talking about their cars, but look at him, he's blue. It's like if the Planeteers were white rappers. And the Icy Hot Stuntaz let us know that they came here with one mission. Aw shit, yo punk ass has just come to the hardest, fattest, and tightest group the world has ever seen. Icy Hot Stuntaz in the 2G+1. We ain't like your backdoor boys, your N-Sucks, or your Britney Smears, and if yo think we is like yo Puff Mommy, yo Snoof Puff, or yo dumb ex, you is crazy wrong. We are taking the hip-hop scene to a whole new level, only rolling in the fattest damn cars where it's on dubs, cutting tracks that smash the charts and shit, and making sure we have enough ice to make you go blind. If you came to our fat site to play a hate, then get the hell out. We ain't needing ya. Sucker! Now, the story of the Icy Hot Stuntaz gets really confusing very quickly. So confusing, in fact, that it kinda made me change the way I keep my research on these videos, probably making the channel moving forward better for having covered the Icy Hot Stuntaz. When covering these kinds of old websites, I've mentioned a lot that something that would happen really commonly was as soon as one of these websites went viral, people would make a bunch of parody sites of it. And I don't think I've ever seen as many parody sites pop up as they did for the Icy Hot Stuntaz. Most of the parody sites just kinda mock the Icy Hot Stuntaz by talking the way that they talk, essentially making them indistinguishable from the genuine website. And one of them seemed to have been made by someone they might have known in real life with a bit of a personal grudge, who had pictures of them not as the Icy Hot Stuntaz. Of what's been archived, we have one of the stunners in a pretty preppy outfit holding a tennis racket, and it calls him a poser because he plays tennis. Also, this being 2001, pretty much all of the parody sites just called them gay. Icy Hot Stuntaz, fighting for gay rights everywhere. You might think, wow, that's fighting for gay rights everywhere, that's very kind of them. Surprisingly woke for a bunch of gangster rappers who've been in and out of prison so many times, right? But you gotta remember, once again, this is 2001, so rest assured that this is them getting owned. One of the better made parodies started off by mostly just imitating the original page and keeping a blog with update posts that gradually get more and more ridiculous. We see the Icy Hot Stuntaz upload their pictures on hotornot.com. The Blade tries to donate blood, but it gets rejected because he has the West Nile virus. And then they tried to join the army after 9/11. This page was actually maintained for a few years, and at the end, the person running it would eventually try to promote his own music, which was actually something that was pretty common with these sites as well. And what was also common was the release of a few music videos pretending to be the Icy Hot Stuntaz, both as parodies and both as people trying to use the attention to get themselves some notoriety. And that being said, I think it's very, very possible, probably likely, that the original Icy Hot Stuntaz site, the one that went viral, being shared through emails and sites like Something Awful and Fark.com, there's a strong chance that that one itself was a parody that had nothing to do with the Icy Hot Stuntaz. Just looking at the bios and all the writing on the original website, it seems likely to me that that one was making fun of another website that might have been more legitimate that this guy saw and was quickly deleted or just never got any kind of attention. And there were some people who thought that maybe the Icy Hot Stuntaz were a deliberate satire made by the guys on the site Basically an online Malibu's Most Wanted before Malibu's Most Wanted. Either way, the Icy Hot Stuntaz would eventually actually release some music, which takes us to mp3.com. And now, mp3.com itself isn't very well archived, so some of what I'm about to say is going off of memory and I might be wrong. But I recall the very early days of mp3.com being a very basic bare-bones site with just a list of songs you could download. Eventually they had a lawsuit that made them take all that stuff down and kind of rebrand as a more legitimate site, and that more legitimate site is somewhat archived. And once they went in that more legitimate direction, it became a pretty big destination to discover new music. I remember finding out about a lot of different bands on there, and I even remember doing stuff like streaming a concert where Slipknot opened for Cold Chamber on my shitty 56K modem. And as time went on, it became more and more of a destination, not just to find, bigger acts like that, but also for independent artists to showcase their music. The Icy Hot Stuntaz page on mp3.com does not appear to have been archived in any way, but going by the context clues, it appears that there were 9 songs in total. Of those 9 tracks, only 2 have been preserved. Get Crunk? And of course, True Pimpin'.
True Pimpin'. Icy Hot True Pimpin'.
And even listening to the songs, it's still kinda difficult to tell if this was done as a satire or if it was made as an earnest attempt to make good music. But the more I looked into this story, the more convinced I became that this group was 100% a legitimate effort. So let's take a look at where the Icy Hot Stuntaz wound up after 2001. Very little could be found out about what happened to their leader, Blade. As for Freeze, allegedly he made a Homestead webpage of his own, and on this page, he talks shit about the other Icy Hot Stuntaz. The earliest remaining archive of this webpage is from November of 2005, and unfortunately it's a dead link. All that remains of Freeze's webpage is a quote in an article from Next Impulse Sports. I did some research, practiced my rhymes at camp with some of the fattest beasts the world ever saw, but the Flame and Blade weren't having none of it. They says I wasn't taking it serious and so on. Bastards told me that I was no good, worst thing they ever seen. But they used my songs and got a crappy replacement. Now you see how big they are? Shizzle my nizzle, these guys got huge off my work. And now it's time for you all to know the truth. Spread the word, y'all. Now, due to all the fakery around the Icy Hot Stuntaz, and due to the fact that this sounds like a guy making fun of how white rappers talk, common sense dictates that this website was probably not actually made by Freeze. But that being said, the story that's being told here is actually corroborated by something I found later. And that being said, let's talk about The Flame, or as he is now known, B-Shock. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to show you the Jesus Lean.
Yeah. See, I know y'all like to dance, so we about to do the Jesus Lean. Like this.
Left, bounce for the king, bounce for the king, bounce for the king, bounce for the king, right, bounce for the king, bounce for the king.
Judging by this color scheme, I'm assuming Jesus is a Crip.
Do the Jesus Lean. Do the Jesus
Look at this girl, she can't keep together, she's absolutely losing her shit. This kid's all out of sync. How do you mess up the Jesus Lean? You just slightly tilt in a direction. But at least he's having a better time than these two. You got that right. The Flame is now known as B-Shock, and he's spreading the word of Christ through the power of rap. And if we look at the bio on his website, it speaks of his beginnings. Pursuing music from the young age of 16 and getting sucked up into this wild partying lifestyle that completely consumed him and left him depressed. He decided that he needed to make a change, and that's when he chose to rap about God. And I could have ended the video here. It's a pretty shocking revelation that this guy just became a Christian rapper, but something about that conclusion, it felt like there's still a missing piece of the puzzle. There's a big gap between the Icy Hot Stuntaz and B-Shock. Whenever I would look up anything about this story, it would just be told as, okay, so 2001, you have the Icy Hot Stuntaz, and then all of a sudden now you got B-Shock, Christian rapper, used to be The Flame. But there's such like a wide gap there that surely there had to be something in the middle. And then I found that something. You see, the current version of B-Shock's website makes absolutely no reference to the Icy Hot Stuntaz. But if you go to the Internet Archive, that piece of the puzzle emerges in 2003. B-Shock was B-Shock, but the project wasn't just B-Shock. It was B-Shock and the Dirty South Basement Boys, aka the Icy Hot Stuntaz rebranded. And this version of the bio contains a little bit more information about what actually happened. So for the first time in 17 years, I present to you the story of the Icy Hot Stuntaz as told by The Flame. B-Shock has grown up in the small town of Toccoa, Georgia, now labeled by him T.O.C. He began having dreams of being on stage rocking crowds in elementary school. He would find himself writing songs on paper and hiding them under his bed, getting them out to sing every so often. It wasn't until the early years of high school that he had finally decided that rap was the genre for him. He discovered a kid in his school owned a small homemade studio. After begging this guy for 3 months, he finally provided B-Shock with some simple rap beats. B-Shock spent a few weeks with these beats and wrote a few songs. He appeared at this homemade studio one night and rapped away. This turned into making a 6-song CD with 2 of his friends. He obtained some local fame with an open concert held in a car garage. After selling many CDs right there in town, a few guys started hating and attempted to torch the group by spreading thousands of degrading websites of them around the world. This corroborates my theory that at least one of the websites was made by someone who knew them in real life and had a personal vendetta. It also means that perhaps there never actually was a real official Icy Hot Stuntaz website. It's possible that they were just put online by that one guy with a vendetta, and then every single parody website was people making fun of that fake website. Even though it was bad publicity, it was publicity. B-Shock said this was simply motivation for him. This is when his heart set on fire. The group decided to change their names from whom they had previously been known. This is when B-Shock became B-Shock. His mother gave him the name. He took out loans and forked out thousands of dollars to purchase his own studio. Immediately, he went to work, mastering the beat machine, mastering the studio mechanics, and most of all, mastering his voice on the microphone. He named his studio DSB, Dirty South Basement Productions. After making The B-Shock Show, a solo CD strictly for practice, one of the guys in his previous group told him that he wanted to stay in the game and was dedicated and down for whatever. He goes by the name Lil Rel. I'm assuming Lil Rel was Blade and that website that was supposed to be by Freeze really was by Freeze, or was made by someone who was aware of this situation. B-Shock then picked up C. Rainey and the girl Bash. These 4 members formed B-Shock and the Dirty South Basement Boys. Most of them attending school in different locations would call each other at night, rapping the new verses they had wrote that day, dying for the weekend to come so they could meet in the studio and lay it down. The group came out with the hot CD, Mean Streets. Everybody was talking about it. Everybody was getting it. Everybody was bumping it everywhere they went. Interestingly, according to an old post on Fark.com, the album Mean Streets was actually uploaded to the Icy Hot Stuntaz mp3.com page. Meaning that essentially, this album, along with the one on the website Shockology, Head Bobbin' 101, are lost Icy Hot Stuntaz albums. Currently, B-Shock is also on tennis scholarship at his school, with many tennis accomplishments in the past, such as being ranked number 3 in the state of Georgia. What? A rapper that plays tennis? That sounds twisted. But not since B-Shock's music has hit the streets. As for now, B-Shock is aiming for the top with his new blazing album, Shockology. He puts all of his faith and trust in G.O.D., asking him for the best. B-Shock prays that he will be a good influence for the rest of the world forever. And then if you want, you can find out how do I become Christian and go to heaven. Can you imagine finding God through the Icy Hot Stuntaz? So it seems like the truth is, not only were the Icy Hot Stuntaz real, but they never went away. This discovery is the evolutionary link between the Icy Hot Stuntaz and B-Shock, who still continues to make an abundance of music to this very day, and who even now maintains his YouTube channel, where he's been vlogging about his experiences in the studio during the pandemic. And although maybe he wanted to bury his connection to the Icy Hot Stuntaz, I think it's cool that one of the internet's earliest memes still lives on to this very day. You're probably familiar with the image in front of you, even if you have no idea what it is or what it means. But a good chunk of you probably are aware that this is the cover of Neutral Milk Hotel's 1998 album, In the Aeroplane Over the Sea. This album, perhaps more so than any other in existence, is an album of internet legends for many reasons. The memes, the conspiracy theories, and the fact that a lot of people genuinely do consider this to be a great, if not perfect, album. So for today's episode of Tales from the Internet, let's take a look at the story behind In the Aeroplane Over the Sea. It's a potato! One thing that I really love about memes is how it can take an old song and breathe new life into it, or even expose it to a wider audience for the first time. A lot of the earliest memes that I remember were super focused on music. All Your Bass, Yatta, Numa, and of course you had Rickrolls, which were probably the first time that anything from 4chan went super mainstream. And don't get me started on the 17 volumes of YTMND soundtracks. It's easy to say, oh, these songs are just meme songs, but when people start listening to them on their own time just because they want to hear the song, they cease being just memes. And I think one of the most interesting cases of the lines being blurred between music and meme is In the Aeroplane Over the Sea. It's a case in which an already well-received album gets propelled to all new heights years later, mostly on the power of memes. And it also has an Anne Frank time travel conspiracy theory, but I'm getting ahead of myself. In the Aeroplane Over the Sea was released on February 10th, 1998. It was the second full-length studio album by Neutral Milk Hotel after their founding by Jeff Mangum in 1989. The album, characterized by its indie rock sound and its lo-fi production, was immediately a major critical success. It received extremely positive reviews from music critics and made a ton of best albums of the 90s lists. However, although it was quickly considered a classic of the genre and a massive cult hit, it was far away from becoming the commercial success it would be years later. Their label only expected to sell around 7,000 copies, which at the time wasn't really much at all. The album's popularity didn't really hit its stride until the mid to late 2000s, several years after the band had disbanded. This resurgence begins in September of 2005 with a reissue of the album. When it was re-released, it once again received a number of extremely positive reviews. In particular, Pitchfork.com, which at this point had established its reputation as a key taste-making publication, gave it a super rare perfect score. And probably more importantly, this re-release also happened to coincide with the increasing popularity of 4chan. In particular, 4chan's music board, Mew. Over the course of the next several years, In the Aeroplane Over the Sea would become a permanent staple of conversations on the board. In fact, to this day, it's probably still the album that's most associated with that board. And although this is partially due to the fact that people genuinely love this album, it's also partially due to the fact that its cover art is exploitable as fuck. This cover art, which is an edited version of an old postcard, features people swimming and a girl sitting on a dock with what appears to be a potato slice for a head. Or maybe it's a drum. Okay, it's probably a drum, but I prefer to think it's a potato, especially because I'm one of the people who initially really thought it was a potato. In fact, whether or not this is a drum or a potato or something completely else has been the source of a lot of debate, and even more memes. And for years, the posting of this album art as well as its derivatives would become so constant and ubiquitous that there was almost a kind of fatigue that would set in around it, and people would kind of get annoyed that you posted it. And in 2011, after constant badgering from fans, Anthony Fantano, himself also a notable Mew meme, commented on the relationship between this album and the internet.
I think this thing is a fantastic record, an amazingly abstract and beautiful record, but the fact that it's kind of become a series of jokes to be typed and repeated in all caps all over the internet is really depressing to me, and I think it destroys the feelings behind this record.
And while he did make a good point here, I think there is another side to this. The memes and this album, they kind of have this symbiotic relationship where they keep feeding off of each other. It might start out as a meme for some people, but eventually that can change into someone genuinely liking the album. Honestly, that kind of describes my experience with the album. I mean, me personally, I was well aware of the memes before I had any idea if it even was an album. And it's generally not the kind of thing I would listen to. I mean, normally I hear an acoustic guitar in a song and I'm just like, skip. But with this one, it was just so overexposed, I guess, that my curiosity got the best of me and I wound up actually liking it. It's probably the only album like this that I've spent any appreciable amount of time with, and that definitely would not have happened without the memes. But this story goes a bit deeper than anybody's opinion of the album or any of the memes that have to do with it. To go further, we have to look at the themes and the concepts behind the album's creation. And although there's a lot of different meanings that can be taken from the various songs, one particularly interesting aspect of it is its relationship to Anne Frank. In a 1997 interview with Puncture magazine, Jeff Mangum explains, "Yeah, I know it might sound kind of cheesy. Right before recording on Avery Island, I was walking around in Ruston waiting to go to Denver to record. I don't consider myself to be a very educated person, because I've spent a lot of my life in dreams. And I was walking around wondering, would everything make more sense to me if I knew the history of the world, or would I just lose my mind? I came to the conclusion I'd probably just lose my mind. Next day I walked into a bookstore and there was the Diary of Anne Frank. I'd never given it any thought before. Then I spent 2 days reading it and completely flipped out. Spent about 3 days crying. It stuck with me for a long time. While I was reading the book, she was completely alive to me. I pretty much knew what was going to happen, but that's the thing. You love people because you know their story. You have sympathy for people even when they do stupid things because you know where they're coming from. You understand where they're at in their head. So here I am, as deep as you can go in someone's head, in some ways deeper than you can go with someone you know in the flesh. And then at the end, she gets disposed like a piece of trash. I would go to bed every night and have dreams about having a time machine, having the ability to move through time and space freely, and save Anne Frank. Do you think that's embarrassing?" And although that time machine dream might just seem like a throwaway thing that Jeff said, it got much deeper in October of 2012. That's when a story that's often referred to as Mangumgate unfolded on Mew. The thread begins with the discovery of Jeff Mangum's high school yearbook. In the yearbook, there's a girl named Coraline Mangum. Any relation to Jeff? As the thread progresses, a user who is most likely aware of Jeff's interest in Anne Frank pointed out the similarities between Anne and Coraline. I can kinda see it, but a lot of people are seeing the resemblance, and a theory starts to unfold that Jeff Mangum didn't just dream the time machine, he actually did do it. And then another user points out a group picture with Coraline where behind the kids, there's something that seems to be a Star of David. I don't really know about that one. I mean, say hypothetically, they really did have time-traveling Anne Frank in class with them. I don't see a high school teacher going, "Hey, you know what? Let's throw a Star of David back there so people who see the picture, they know the hints." Another wrinkle in the story appears when a user posts a picture of Jeff Mangum's wife, Astra Taylor. They point out that Astra also resembles Coraline and/or Anne, so I guess he's got a type. And that's when the full scope of the theory comes together. Guys, Jeff Mangum saved her in some sort of time machine, brought her to the late 1970s as his sister. They both graduate high school, and under the fake name Coraline Mangum, once they graduate, they leave state and Anne has her name changed again to Astra Taylor. And some of the song lyrics were used as further evidence. From Ghost, "She was born in a bottle rocket with wings that ring around the socket," obviously symbolizing Jeff's time machine. "I know that she will live forever, she won't ever die." What the fuck, man? Then, One day in New York City, a girl fell from the sky. Jeff bringing Anne to our time period. It was also noted that Anne Frank's exact date of death was unknown, and the remains weren't identified. And now, of course, there are some things that we need to consider with this theory. Say hypothetically, Jeff Mangum really did go all the way back in time to save Anne Frank, which I'm not so sure how a 90s indie rocker manages to infiltrate a heavily guarded German camp. But let's just say he pops in and out too fast for them to react. And then he brings her to his childhood to be his childhood friend, and then he goes back to 1997 and finishes the album. I would think that the introduction of a brand new childhood friend would alter the course of his life in such a way that he might not ever come to the point where he would create that album. And if he never gets to that point, he never has the reason to go back in time and save Anne Frank, creating some kind of a time paradox. You see, this is why John Titor did the multiverse thing. But I think there might be some merit to this idea in the sense that perhaps Anne Frank's resemblance to his sister might have played a role in why this story affected him so much and caused him to go on to create one of indie rock's most iconic albums. If you're a Tool fan, you've probably heard the news by now. Their new album, Fear Inoculum, has leaked online 5 days ahead of schedule. But this particular leak has much more of a story than your average internet album leak. It begins early on Friday the 23rd when an unboxing video of the album's deluxe edition makes its way onto YouTube. The video depicts a child opening up the album, and it was believed by many at first to be the child of Tool's guitar player Adam Jones. This theory went out the window, however, when the unboxing video was taken down by a copyright claim. Although, as some have pointed out, it would be the label taking down the video and not the band itself, meaning that Adam Jones could very well have been behind the video. Either way, it was clear that this thing was tightly locked up and they didn't want a single detail getting out about it. And the next day, August 24th, retailers begin receiving their copies of the album preparing for the week's release. And you had a few eager Amazon employees posting pictures to Reddit trying to show off, where of course some other Redditors tried to coax them into leaking the album. Consider the following. Your job is irrelevant and will be replaced by fully automatized robots in the near future. It's dead end and does not really give you a chance to get you promoted, plus you're working for the literal Babylonian hyper-capitalist slave company run by a bald sociopath. You don't lose anything by stealing it or ripping it. Just a suggestion. You know, nothing personal or pushy. Just a suggestion. None of these employees were convinced, of course, perhaps for fear of losing their job or worse legal repercussions from the band or their label. But that all changed later on that night at approximately 11 p.m. Eastern Time. That was when a man who would later become known as the Chosen One appeared, a user named Circle of Nine. I might be able to get this for you guys in the next 2 hours. Circle of Nine was a Target employee who was promising what that morning's Amazon employees refused to deliver the goods. But by that point, everyone had already seen plenty of pictures of the album, and it just could be another guy yanking everybody's chain. And even if he wasn't, 2 hours is a lot of time to convince yourself not to do something that you probably shouldn't do. But then, Circle of Nine's shift ends, and he posts this. Guys, I fucking have it. That ain't no Target floor. That's a car. So it's pretty simple. Circle of Nine drives home, rips the album, uploads it, and it's game over, right? Well, not quite. You see, Circle of Nine couldn't quite figure out how to rip the album. The drive on his laptop wasn't working, and his desktop didn't even have any kind of disk drive because, you know, it's 2019, who even has physical media anymore, right? And the night could have very well ended there. Circle of Nine could sit down and enjoy the album by himself, drowning out the screams of Redditors calling him a fraud. But if that's what happened, we wouldn't be here. Because you see, Circle of Nine was the chosen one. He was the one destined to deliver the album. So not ready to give up yet, he makes another post. Somebody in Vegas, fucking help. And somebody responded, Brisnich, dude, we are here for you. What you need. Come to the Mirage. Right now. We are here waiting for you, OP. Bring that shit. The Mirage, that's in Vegas. Drive, OP. Drive like you've never driven before. You come here, we rip that shit, end of story. We have computers. The world loves you forever. Sounds great, right? Come here now. Stop questioning what you know is right and come here. Now. And finally, Circle of Nine responds. I'm on my way. How do I find you? And thus, Circle of Nine began his journey to the Vegas Strip. And at this point, Reddit was still pretty skeptical. I mean, it's not unheard of for a couple of guys to get together on Reddit, bounce a few messages back and forth, and pretend to be doing something that they're not really doing. Reminds me a little bit of some kids in a hard drive, yeah? Would somebody really drive all the way across Las Vegas to leak an album that they already had in their possession for free, all while putting himself at great risk, not just, legal risk, but because what kind of weirdo is out there inviting strange Redditors to their hotel room late at night? But some time passes, and Circle of Nine posts this. On my way to Mirage. Now shut the fuck up about this being fake. And there it is. The Strip. We're getting close. We are all in. And a little while later, Circle parks his car, takes the album, and makes his way into the Mirage. Waiting for friends. And then, his friends would arrive. Circle of Nine makes his way up to Briznich's hotel room in the Mirage on the Las Vegas Strip, where he rips the files from the album. Circle of Nine and Briznich say their goodbyes, Circle gets back in his car, and drives home after a long, long night. But, the files didn't make it online. Time was passing, and the people were getting restless. Can you give us some more info about what went down? A guy grabbed a display case, not the actual CD, and proceeded to troll the sub for over 2 hours. And Circle of Nine himself was starting to panic. I'm sorry. Don't know what the holdup is, I'm not involved anymore. My CD drive didn't work on my laptop, and my pre-built gaming PC didn't come with one. I'm waiting for this just like you guys. If it doesn't happen, I'm sorry I let everyone down. I'm fucking terrified now. I haven't even been able to enjoy the CD my damn self. Too much going on in my head. So does you/Briznich have the files? Who? Check again. He gone. Yep. The Reddit user Briznich, who Circle of Nine drove all the way across Las Vegas to bring the CD to, deleted his account. Without uploading any of the damn files. So what was this guy's game? Did he just want to keep the files for himself? Maybe auction it off to the highest bidder? Was this entire story a ruse from the beginning, just like Secret HDD? Did Circle of Nine actually just grab a display case? Well, no. Circle of Nine would then come to debunk this particular claim with this post. People still don't believe. God, I'm so stressed out. And there it is, the contents of Tool's Fear Inoculum packaging. And with a sigh, Circle of Nine decides to try one more time. Is there anybody fucking else in Las Vegas? Round 2, baby, let's go! But there's no need. Before Circle of Nine could get back in his car to drive all the way across Vegas to meet yet another online stranger, Briznich, wherever he was, came through. The album made its way onto the internet in places that I won't tell you because I would never encourage such illegal behavior. But rest assured that night, Circle of Nine became an internet legend. But if you ask him what happened, dude got a hold of a CD but couldn't work a fucking computer, lol. What a scrub. Someone else got the CD, Circle wasn't involved anymore, music very good. But I think it's really this post by B Says that puts it best. Sometimes I think music's lost its magic. Then things like complete strangers bonding by being hunched over a computer for a Las Vegas Tool heist to come to fruition, and it all comes flooding back. We are all maniacs. And thus concludes the great Fear Inoculum escapade. As a kid, buying a new CD was always a big event. I remember going to Sam Goody to buy Slipknot's self-titled album, ripping off the plastic, fumbling with that stupid sticker that was always on the top and you couldn't really peel it off the right way, so putting it in my Discman, stuffing it into the inside pocket of a denim jacket, which made it bounce around too much, so I couldn't really listen to it on the way home. So I had to take it out and hold it like this and try to keep my arm as still as possible while I walked. You know, CDs were kind of a shitty format. Let's just be real here. But that's fine because around that time, that's when CDs were getting ready to be replaced. It completely blew my mind when I realized that you could get individual songs in MP3 form online. And yeah, it took forever just to get a single song with my terrible 14.4K connection, but It was a start. And it was free, and I didn't have to go to the store. But at that point, I was still going out and buying CDs because it was just more convenient. I mean, if you wanted to get MP3s at that point, you had to go to a bunch of different shady websites and forums, and the selection was very limited. But then, a little program came along and changed everything. This is the story of Napster. It's easy to take for granted how much access we have to just about anything we want these days. Almost any song, book, movie, video game you want, you can get it almost immediately with varying degrees of legality. But this kind of access really hasn't been around for that long, and getting to that point took a lot of growing pains. And one of the biggest sources of these very necessary growing pains was Napster. Napster was originally not the name of an app, but a username on IRC. That username belonged to a young programmer named Sean Fanning. And it was on IRC under that username that Sean Fanning would meet his literal partner in crime, Sean Parker, who you might know as Justin Timberlake. Sean Fanning came up with the idea for Napster after his college roommate was complaining about how hard it was to find the music he wanted online. At the time, MP3s could be found if you were looking for them, but it was very decentralized and the selection was very limited. The whole experience just generally wasn't very user-friendly. Sometimes you could find songs on various forums, various websites. You could go on Hotbot and search for some music and maybe you'd get lucky. And there were also things like email networks. Like there's this one I remember vaguely. I might be describing it somewhat wrong at this point because it was on AOL and a lot of that stuff's just gone. But I remember being a part of this one email service where basically a bot would send you a catalog of all the albums they had. You respond with the number of the album you want, and then the bot sends it to you. At that point, it was pretty convenient, but still not as convenient or as expansive as what Napster would bring to us. And on June 1st of 1999, after a few very, very long coding marathons, the Seans finally unleashed Napster upon the world. And even with that very first release, Napster began to set the internet on fire. Word of mouth spread very quickly, and within basically no time, there were already millions of people using the service. I mean, who could realistically pass up, for the first time in all of human history, having unprecedented access to a massive library of free music that was growing every single moment? Access to a library that was user-friendly, easy, and immediate. Well, I mean, as immediate as you can, at least for me, I still had dial-up, so it wasn't immediate, but you get what I'm saying. And it wasn't even like you just have access to the same stuff you'd find at a record store. There were all kinds of rarities and unusual files to be found. Old concert bootlegs, rare out-of-print albums, unreleased demos. And there's also a lot of mislabeled, off-the-wall weird stuff. Like you probably remember this one song about the Legend of Zelda that it said was by System of a Down, or Group X, or Mr. Bungle, but in reality it was none of these bands.
Link, come to town, come to save the Princess Zelda.
The song was actually made by a guy named Joe Plyman, but Napster had a big part in spreading that as far as it did. Or if you were a J-Rock fan, you might remember the supposed song Sea of Retards that was allegedly by Duran Gray. That's definitely not Duran Gray. Napster very quickly outgrew its status as some college kid's pet project and became a big deal. Sean Fanning dropped out of college to focus on Napster full-time, and in pursuit of making Napster a legitimate business, they moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area. Ironically, the San Francisco Bay Area was also the home of an entity that would come to be Napster's undoing. As you probably know, I'm talking about Metallica. Oh yeah! In early 2000, a new Metallica song entitled I Disappear started to be played on the radio across the country. But there was one problem. Metallica never actually released this song. In fact, the song that was being played on the radio was an unfinished demo. It was planned for release that summer as a part of the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack, so how did it get out? Lars Ulrich, the drummer of Metallica, explains. Cliff Bernstein, Metallica co-manager, calls one day and says, "We were working on a song for this Tom Cruise film, Mission Impossible 2, called I Disappear, and we recorded it in between some touring commitments. And it was gonna be held back till the next summer. And so one day I got a call from Cliff saying I Disappear is being played on 20 radio stations across America. And we're like, How the fuck is this possible? And he said, there's something called Napster where people can go and share. And we're like, how the hell did they get I Disappear? It lives in our vault somewhere. And so we traced it back to this company Napster, and as you did in those days, it was like, well, let's go fuck with Napster then. And what Lars describes as fucking with Napster took the form of legal action against the company. And although Metallica believed themselves to be justified in this action, public opinion turned wildly against them. A lot of people were quick to call Metallica hypocrites for being against file sharing, considering that their rise to fame was largely promoted by tape trading. By fighting against Napster, Metallica not only potentially were squashing something that helped them get to where they were possibly preventing smaller acts from achieving the same success. Critics also pointed to a study conducted in 2000 that showed that people on file sharing services such as Napster actually spent more money on music than people who weren't. And these findings were further evidenced by the unexpectedly high performance on charts by Kid A, Radiohead's album that had been leaked to Napster earlier. Metallica, however, were unmoved by these arguments and even escalated things further when they delivered a list of 300,000 names to Napster. These names belonged to Napster users who had downloaded Metallica songs. Subsequently, these users were banned from Napster, and people saw this as Metallica directly attacking their fans. And fans fought back by relentlessly mocking Metallica, particularly in the form of flash animations on Newgrounds and other websites.
Oh, you post-pubescent boys who have bought, like, our albums and our t-shirts and our concert videos and
T-shirts, good!
Yeah, t-shirts.
And you could probably count Matt and Trey Parker among these annoyed fans, as Metallica was also mocked on South Park.
Look, there's Lars now sitting by his pool.
What's the matter with him?
This month he was hoping to have a gold-plated Shark Tank bar installed right next to the pool, but thanks to people downloading his music for free, he must now wait a few months before he can afford it.
Lars, however, stuck to his guns and appeared unfazed by all of this. Furthermore, although much of the criticism against Metallica was characterized as them being greedy, Lars maintained that the money didn't matter, but rather he was more concerned about distribution rights.
Right now, it's not about the money, it's really about the control and about the future. The money that's being lost right now in this revenue is pocket change.
And in this same episode of The Charlie Rose Show, Chuck D was there to debate Lars and provided a lot of counter arguments that echoed what the fans were saying.
When cassette recorders came in, it was this, oh, they're going to rob, they're going to take away from the sales. And this has proven to be contrary to what has happened. Matter of fact, it's a super turbo booster to the industry.
Chuck D, however, was in the minority when it came to music industry insiders. Metallica would eventually be joined by Dr. Dre and a large number of record labels under the RIAA in filing lawsuits against Napster. Napster attempted to fight back in court by saying that copyrighted material present on their service constituted fair use. In particular, Napster named 3 ways that they believe that this material could be used legally. Sampling, where users make temporary copies of a work before purchasing. Space shifting, where users access a sound recording through the Napster system that they already own in audio CD format. And permissive distribution of recordings by both new and established artists. This was how the court responded to these claims by Napster. 1. Sampling, where users make temporary copies of a work to sample it before purchase, which the district court found to be a commercial use even if a user purchases the work at a later time. Sampling was deemed to not be fair use because the samples were in fact permanent and complete copies of the desired media. 2. Space shifting, where users access a sound recording through the Napster system that they already own in an audio CD format. Here the district court found that neither of the shifting analyses used in the Sony or RIAA versus Diamond Multimedia cases applied in this case because of the shifting in neither case included or enabled distribution. The space shifting argument did not succeed because while the shift to a digital format may have been a personal storage use, it was accompanied by making the file available to the rest of the system's users. 3. Permissive distribution of recordings by both new and established artists who have authorized their music to be disseminated in the Napster system, which the district court ruled was not an infringing use and could continue, along with chat rooms and other non-distributory features of Napster. Ultimately, it was determined that despite any possible non-infringing purposes of Napster, Napster was aware of infringing uses. and as such, they were required to block such uses. And thus, Judge Marilyn Hall Patel, who oversaw the case, determined that Napster had to police their service. And policing this service would entail removing every single infringing file. And in the following months, Napster tried to fulfill this order. Napster tried to implement a variety of different ways to block any copyrighted content from their platform. However, none of the techniques that they implemented were satisfactory to the judge. And on July 11th, 2001, Judge Patel orders that Napster remain shut down until they can guarantee that 100% of copyrighted content would not remain on Napster. This guarantee would never be met, and Napster would remain closed. But at this point, the closure of Napster meant very little for the online P2P file-sharing community. A good chunk of Napster's users had already moved on to other services, such as Winamx, BearShare, Nutella. Napster died, but in its wake, tons of other services came to fill its void. And this set off a seemingly endless game of whack-a-mole between the music industry and the internet. And although this incarnation of Napster closed forever, this wouldn't be the end of the Napster story. In September of that year, Napster agreed to paying out a $26 million settlement to the music industry. After that settlement, they filed for bankruptcy. And after they did file for bankruptcy, there was a bankruptcy auction in which they were purchased by a company named Roxio for $5.3 million. A bit later in 2003, the very same year that iTunes launched, Roxio relaunched Napster as a paid service. It offered a la carte music purchases like iTunes did, and it also had a subscription service. But this version of Napster didn't have anywhere near the success of its competitors or its original version, and eventually it was sold off to Best Buy, who also did not have much success with it. And in 2011, Napster was then purchased by the streaming service Rhapsody. And although Rhapsody used the Napster name in some markets, it wasn't until 2016 that they completely rebranded internationally as Napster. And now to this very day, you can actually go onto Napster and stream music. The fact that that revelation probably surprised you goes to show how successful this version's been. And it's actually kind of funny because despite being the name that brought piracy to the mainstream, today, Napster actually gives better payouts to artists than most streaming services. They actually pay out something like 4 times more than Spotify does per stream. But somehow I don't see people rushing to adopt the new Napster. So where are we at with music piracy now? Although some studies claim that music piracy is actually down due to the ease of streaming services, there's other studies that conflict with that. What muddies the waters a bit when looking at these numbers, though, is the fact that between the time that Napster was born and today, there's a lot more people using the internet. I have a feeling that if we adjusted for these new users, we would find that, as a whole, streaming has taken a big dent out of piracy. I also think we could contrast this with the film industry and the TV industry and their complete and utter failure to provide convenient, all-encompassing streaming services and see how much of a difference there is. I think the more and more fragmented it gets and the more and more companies want to introduce their own streaming platform, the more we're going to see piracy go through the roof, because at the end of the day, if you're anything like me, you just want something where you can sit down and watch what you want. I'll pay for it if you deliver it, but you're not delivering it. And if we take a look back at that debate between Lars Ulrich and Chuck D, which at this point I think is 18 years ago, I think we'll see that a lot of what Chuck D had to say has come to fruition by now.
For the longest time, the label's dominance have kept the little man from participating in the music business. They're screaming and crying because they'll have to share the marketplace.
And as for the people behind the controversy, I think you might be surprised to see where things have come. Lars Ulrich has actually expressed regret for delivering all those usernames to Napster. He doesn't regret suing them, but he feels that singling out the fans was a misstep. And despite all that, you're probably going to be even more surprised to hear that Lars Ulrich and Sean Parker are actually now friends. Such good friends that Lars Ulrich actually attended Sean Parker's wedding. How's that for a twist? You probably know this face, but in case you don't, this is the face of Maria Takeuchi, a massively famous Japanese singer who has been releasing hits since the late 70s. but she was relatively unknown in the US until the past couple years, when a quirk of the YouTube algorithm put her 1984 song Plastic Love in just about everyone's recommendations. The song's unlikely internet success primarily revolved around a single upload of the song by a user named Plastic Lover, and this particular upload of the song became somewhat of a nexus point for the micro-genre of music known as city pop. But one day, several months ago, that special upload that had been blessed by the YouTube algorithm was taken down by a copyright claim. But it wasn't taken down by her record label as you might expect, rather, it was taken down by a man named Alan Levinson. So who is Alan Levinson, and what does he have to do with Plastic Love? Find out in today's episode of Tales from the Internet. The YouTube algorithm is a funny thing, and it's something that most YouTubers struggle to really understand. And it's something that Google itself is very vague about for the sake of keeping people from gaming the system. And every once in a while, the YouTube algorithm will put a suggestion in seemingly everybody's feed for reasons that can only boggle the mind. Who could forget the important videos playlist? Or the Wasp Nest guy? Or more recently, the 30-year-old virgin and Simon Gotch buries Enzo Amore. Even by many accounts, my own Brian Pepper's video enjoyed this very same treatment. But Plastic Love is a little bit different. While most of these videos that enjoy the blessing of the algorithm juice kind of enjoy their moment, people scratch their chins, go, that was pretty interesting, and then they move on. Plastic Love was a case that kind of changed culture as a whole. That one specific upload of that one specific song somehow became a gateway where all of a sudden in 2018, Westerners were transported back to a time in 1984 Japan. Suddenly, millions of people had their eyes open to a world of music that they never knew existed, a genre known as city pop. But I'm not here to summarize the story of this song or hypothesize about why it became so popular and why the YouTube algorithm decided to bless it. A YouTuber named Stevem has a very comprehensive video on this song and is also responsible for most of the new information I'll be presenting in this video. So I've invited him onto the channel to give his synopsis of it. Take it away, Stevem.
So Maria Takeuchi is a Japanese singer-songwriter whose career was propelled by her 1984 album, Variety, which turned her into a defining force of the city pop era, a #1 star. Despite Variety being a big hit album, its single Plastic Love didn't do so hot upon its release. But over the years it's became a cult favourite, especially to those dedicated fans. In the digital age, forum users, anime fans, and niche musical genres grew an attachment to the song. A decade later, its relevance grew in those subcultures. It was remixed, sampled, and reworked, all coming to a head when it became the top post on a subreddit called Listen to This, gaining a lot of views in the process before it was deleted by Warner Bros., causing a Streisand effect as the whole YouTube platform was filled with copycats. At some point, the publishers Warner Music stopped deleting them and one video rose to the top, the Plastic Lover version. That peaked at around 24 million views. It was such an epidemic, musical sites were spilling out articles, and Maria Takeuchi herself responded to its popularity in her first English interview ever. Somehow this J-Funk piece of nostalgia, along with its bowtie photo, became an internet sensation, fueled by memes and its catchy hooks. But that's not where the story ends.
And it's that bowtie photo that this controversy stems from. That's the photo that, despite not being the official cover artwork for the single, was the photo that was made famous online through Plastic Lover's upload of the song. At least, it was until that fateful day of December 20th, 2018, when it was taken down by a copyright claim not from Maria Takeuchi's record label, but by Alan Levinson. Not to be confused with Douglas Levison. Sucker! But who is Alan Levinson? A cursory search reveals that he is an LA-based photographer who specializes in portraits and stock photos. A really good photographer. And if you look at his Facebook page, you'll find this post from September 12, 2018, in which he shares Steve's YouTube video. The internet is amazing. Just found out a photo taken almost 40 years ago is all over the internet. Alan was ecstatic to find out that this photo he had taken nearly 40 years ago had been viewed over 18 million times. So he reached out to Steve to thank him for making such a great video on the topic, and he also told him the story behind the photo.
The year was 1980 in Los Angeles. It was one of Alan's earliest jobs as a photographer. RCA, the company behind Maria, wanted a upbeat, cool Californian vibe for her new album. So much so, they shot without a permit, out of a van on Hollywood Boulevard. The budget was tight, the company just didn't have the money to pay the actual photographer, who Leveson worked for at the time, so he did the job instead. Doing the shoot in his boss's studio, Leveson was disappointed that RCA chose some tapestry work for the cover instead of his idea, sticking it on a single instead, while chucking a couple of his photos from the B-roll in the back. Little did he know, his cover would become the face of City Pop 38 years later.
Although Alan was obviously very proud that this photo he had taken 40 years ago would become so famous, so beloved, and so iconic that to many people, it was the photo that defined a genre, he was also feeling a bit sore. He was disappointed that it wasn't used as the album cover, and for nearly 40 years he thought that was the end of the story with that picture. Furthermore, he was never compensated by it. And with Warner Brothers ramping up for Maria Takeuchi's 40th anniversary release, and with this photo that he took being so iconic with her Western fans, he thought now was the opportunity to reach out with them and get something going. And Alan was successful at getting in contact with both Warner Brothers and her older record label Sony. However, they were unable to come to terms that were mutually satisfactory, and Alan became increasingly frustrated with the situation. So later in September, Alan went and registered a copyright for the image. After registering the copyright, he reached out to Steve and asked if he could add the subtitle Alan Levinson 2018 to all instances of the image in the video. However, since YouTube doesn't allow you to edit things like that into a video after it's already been uploaded and they've gotten rid of their annotation system, there was nothing Steve could do. So Alan and Steve came to the agreement that Steve would simply add 2018 Alan Levinson to the description instead. Something that Steve didn't really have to do since commentary is covered under fair use, but a request he was more than happy to oblige. At this point, Alan also stated his intention to issue cease and desist letters to the larger infringers. In particular, he tried to get in contact with Plastic Lover, whose upload was now up to 20 million views. Although neither Plastic Lover nor Warner Brothers had received any money from that version of the upload, Alan was still upset that his photo was used without permission. It wasn't until a few months later, on December 20th of 2018, that Plastic Lover's upload of the song was removed, and the internet learned the name, Alan Levinson, and the internet was not happy. Alan almost immediately began receiving hate mail, and in addition, tweets and threads began popping up all over the internet cursing his name. As much as people loved Plastic Love, they hated Alan Levinson. But Steve, who had previously been on friendly terms with Alan, saw another way, and on December 21st, he tweeted this. As you may know, Alan Levinson has taken down the original Plastic Love video. Now, I don't want any of you to send him hate, but I would like you to write him a message on this tweet where you ask him to remove the strike or tell him how important that video is to you. I will then send Alan an email where I plead the case of the people against Alan. And several people replied to Steve's tweet pleading the case of this specific upload of Plastic Love. Steve compiled these tweets into an email that he sent to Alan. However, Alan was unmoved. According to Alan, he had never intended for what had happened to the video to happen. He simply wanted his image removed from the video. He didn't understand that the way YouTube would handle this would be to take down the entire video. Furthermore, he felt that all of the people sending him hate mail should have been on his side. He felt that he never got from the record labels what was rightfully his, and he thought that if he worked together with the fans to get in touch with the record labels, that they could work something out that made everybody happy. But now, everybody was at an impasse. The fans saw Alan as a greedy old man, and Alan saw the fans as a bunch of entitled kids. And it seems like this is where the story of that particular upload of Plastic Love ends. With Plastic Lover's upload of the song gone, many more have popped up to take its place. And despite none of these uploads hitting the YouTube algorithm quite the same way, the internet legacy of that upload, the community that popped up around it, and City Pop in general had already been cemented. Maria's 40th anniversary came and went without Alan's involvement, which is a shame because, as I understand it, Alan has a lot more photos from that shoot that have never been public. And I can only imagine the roller coaster that this was for Alan. Imagine! He finds out one day that this photo he took 40 years ago was world famous out of nowhere. And he barely has any time to enjoy this success before developing an adversarial relationship with the community that loved his photo so. It's been a few months, and it seems like nobody has heard from Alan recently, and the world has moved on, but if there are updates to this story, I will let you know. I've got a quick update with some good news regarding a story I covered a few months ago. Plastic Love, and I mean the original viral upload of it by Plastic Lover, is back. And at the time of me recording this, it's sitting there with just under 25 million views, but I imagine by the time I upload it, it might be way ahead. But anyway, if you haven't seen my original video on the topic, I recommend watching that before this one so you know what's going on, but if you don't want to, here's the summary. The song Plastic Love by Maria Takeuchi becomes a viral sensation on the internet. One specific upload of the song by a user named Plastic Lovers for some reason hits the YouTube algorithm so well that it winds up in practically everybody's suggested videos. And due to the popularity of this upload, it kind of becomes the central online hub for the Japanese music genre known as city pop. Then one day, the photographer of the picture used in the thumbnail, Alan Levinson, learns that his picture associated with the song became massively famous. It's a picture that he took 30 years ago that he was never compensated for. This discovery led to a series of events that would lead to Plastic Lover's upload getting taken down by a copyright strike. And that basically puts us where my last video left off. So let me fill you in on some of the things that happened since then. The day after my Plastic Love video was uploaded, I received an email from Alan Levinson to clarify a few points. Hi Wang, interesting video on the story of the Plastic Love photo. I learned of the use of the photo from an inquiry from a record company wanting to know if the photo was taken by me. That was surprising, since I did not have any idea it was ever used. I came across Steven's video when I did an internet search to see where the photo was used. You have an email for business inquiries, so I guess you believe in making a living and I do not fault you for that. Not sure why many fault me for standing up for the use of my work, but that's life. Live and learn. I did not kill City Pop. Don't want to. And in case you haven't noticed, you are using my photos along with many others. Unfortunately, the record companies, the lawyers, and the artists do not think the photo is important or of much value. That is the real story. Many artists are being ripped off on the internet today, while the big companies, YouTube, Google, Warner Brothers, etc., sit back and rake in billions. That is also a part of the story. A little support and understanding for artists who provide the content we all enjoy would be a nice thing. And I am not just talking about me. It is tough for many artists today unless you're in the top of the top. I have received some letters of support from fans as well, and they are dear to me. We cannot live on clicks alone. I wish you success in your creative work. And that was the last I heard about anything Plastic Love related until about a month later on April 29th when I received this message from Steven. I received an email from Alan about a week ago. He said he was considering taking the strike off the Plastic Love video, among some other stuff. Only problem is, neither of us can get in contact with Plastic Lover. They seem to have disappeared, which is a problem since Alan wanted to confirm it with PL beforehand. The video might be gone by now, but who knows. I had assumed that the original upload was just completely gone now, off of YouTube, can't be retrieved, that's the end of it. And there was a chance that that was the case, but then, the very next day, I received another message from Steven. I got a message, but from Plastic Lover, so I'm gonna help him with the thumbnail. Think Alan's only demand is his name on the side of it. And from that point on, a couple weeks passed, I would occasionally check to see if the upload was back up yet, and I kind of assumed that it fell through the cracks and just wasn't happening. But then on May 14th, a few hours before I started to record this video, I received another message from Steven. The original upload is now back up. And sure enough, I clicked on it and there it was, the original upload still there with all of its views and all of its glory. Now updated with Alan Levinson's watermark on the thumbnail. And Plastic Lover has provided their side of the story in a pinned comment. Months after the takedown, Plastic Love has been fully restored, and it's all thanks to Alan's willingness to negotiate and tell me more about the case, and Steven's support throughout this journey. Please keep a civil discussion here and try not getting too off topic. Explaining the situation. Alan tried contacting me about the use of the picture since he already had a messy history with Warner Brothers regarding the picture, and all he wanted was to be credited. However, I was absent and did not respond to any of his messages. resulting in Alan filing a copyright claim against the video. He did not know that once he filed the copyright strike, the video would be removed. Once the video was removed, Alan faced a lot of harassment and insults. I'll say it right here. Although you might not agree with his actions, you should still respect him as a person, and quite clearly a lot of people did not. I even saw some of those messages. This is certainly not okay and painted a bad image on what Plastic Love fans are. Initially, Alan thought I was the one behind the threats. However, as we spoke, I made it clear I wasn't, and he was shown to be a really nice guy, undeserving of all that was being thrown at him. After a few conversations and trade of information, we settled an agreement, and currently he has removed the claim and YouTube has restored the video. Plastic Lover also provided some links to videos on the topic: Stevem's video, my video, which it says I'm UC3JDN, I don't know why that is, and Plastic Love is Good by Zan Huxtable. He then concludes his message by saying, "I do not own the music or the photo. If you want to purchase the song or album, Maria's digital media is available through iTunes, and a physical CD can be purchased online on websites. If you want to see more of the photographer's work, check it out at alanlevinson.com. And what I'm thinking is, it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out in the YouTube algorithm, because before the video got taken down, it had a lot of that YouTube suggestion juice going for it. I could see it going one of two ways. Because it was taken down for so long, all that power in the YouTube algorithm might just be completely wiped out and it never reaches its old peak. But we don't really know if situations like that cause YouTube to recommend a video less when it comes back, and I think, according to them, it doesn't, but we can't trust them. But there's also the chance that due to the combination of people talking about it being back and due to people who used to listen to it, listening to it again, it might get actually more popular than it ever was before. Whichever way it plays out, I think we're going to learn a little something about how YouTube works from this experience. In February of 2003, a man named Carlin Langley went for a fabulous night out at a gay bar in the heart of New York City. He was having a great time when suddenly he met a long-haired, bearded fellow who introduced himself as Mike Portnoy, aka the drummer of the band Dream Theater. And like some of you, I imagine, Carlin Langley had no idea who Mike Portnoy was, and he had no idea what Dream Theater was. However, if you do know who Mike Portnoy is, then you know that he is considered by many people to be one of, if not the greatest rock drummer in the world. And Mike spent no time telling Carlin Langley about all the things that Dream Theater had been up to. He told me he'd just come back from Japan where he'd signed an endorsement deal with a drum manufacturer. So sure, even though Carlin Langley had no idea who Mike Portnoy was or what Dream Theater was, how often do you get the chance to hook up with a bona fide rock star? So Carlin took Mike back to his place where, according to the New York Post, they were intimate. Then they fell asleep, and when Carlin woke up, he found no trace of Mike. He also found no trace of his wallet, his keys, or his cell phones. Realizing that his apartment had just been ransacked by Mike Portnoy, the drummer of Dream Theater, Carlin Langley got on the phone with his credit card company, who informed him that Mike Portnoy had already spent $1,000 on his card. And Carlin Langley was not alone in having this sort of experience with the drummer from Dream Theater. Between February and March of 2003, the internet became flooded with stories of gay men who were swindled by Mike Portnoy. Here's what one of his victims had to say about the con. "I wanted to somehow get word to Mike that there's a guy in NYC who is pretending to be Mike, picking guys up at bars, restaurants, and on the street, convincing them that he's Mike Portnoy, the world-famous drummer from Dream Theater. He has all their music CDs, knows every beat of every song, and the words, and has Mike's schedule both past and present down to a T. He says that he's been struggling with his sexuality lately, thinking back to a molestation when he was 14, and has decided to give it another try to see if he can finally find happiness. After convincing them of who he is, and of his sincerity, they get it on, and at some point when they aren't paying attention, he steals whatever he can find from them. From me, it was my wallet, IDs, credit cards, ATM cards, social security card, etc. This impersonator's con was so good that he had actually managed to initially fool Chris Cafferty of the band Sabotage. And after he realized that he too had been taken in by this guy, Chris Cafferty posted an update. "Hello. It is April and snowing. The world hates America, and there is a Mike Portnoy imposter running around New York City. You may have noticed that I removed my post about Mike. It was for good reason. Although I have seen band photos and played festivals with Dream Theater, I never really knew their faces. My friend called me and told me that Mike wanted to say hello. This was last week. A few days later, in the city, I was introduced to who was supposed to be Mike. The guy had the whole bar fooled, me included. He obviously did a whole bunch of research on Mike and his career and family. He apparently had stolen his wallet and cell phone. He had his ID, so who was to know? And what really helped this guy fool Chris Cafferty at first was that he just had such a good command of the details. The guy knew very serious business details and family matters of Mike's. He was even recognized by people as Mike Portnoy when I was with him. He held phone conversations on my phone with supposed mutual friends. It was a pretty good act. The ID, the Rolex, the drum companies, the phone calls. The guy was pretty convincing. Everyone in the bar was calling him Mike and buying him drinks and talking about his band. He even knew that we played a show together in Sao Paulo. Cafferty started to get a little suspicious, however, when he heard Mike Portnoy play the drums. I got into a room to jam with this guy last week and knew something was up. He was still hammered, but he was not a good drummer. I went online to Mike's site and we noticed that although he looked similar, he was scrawny and had a space between his teeth that did not exist on Mike's photos. Chris Cafferty also wanted to make one thing very clear. Apparently, the guy was trying to pick up guys too. I assure you that he was not doing this in my case. I think I am pretty obvious in my ways. For a period of time, this Mike Portnoy imposter was becoming so prolific that he started to get a reputation around the city. Here's another instance recounted by Adam Newman, a stand-up comedian who worked his encounter with the fake Mike Portnoy into a bit.
This guy drunkenly stumbled up to me and some friends. My friend goes, "What's your name?" And he goes, "The drummer from Dream Theater." That's how he introduced himself. He was so drunk, he pulled a bottle of pills, not out of his pocket, out of his pants. They were in the front of his pants, in his waistline, no cap on them. Take some down. My friend goes, "What are those?" And he goes, "Something bad." And I'm on YouTube looking at drum tutorials and concert footage, and I'm finding the drummer from Dream Theater, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, that's not the guy from last night at all. It wasn't the drummer from Dream Theater. It was just a guy saying he was a drummer from Dream Theater. And I told some friends the story. 3 friends of mine said, that same thing happened to me.
So this imposter basically did his thing for well over a month until on April 1st of 2003, he was finally caught in a sting that Mike Portnoy, the real Mike Portnoy, described as being a scene out of NYPD Blue. The capture of the fake Mike Portnoy begins with a musician named Ray Freeman who happened to be hanging out at a bar in the West Village called Finally Fred's. Ray needed a drummer to play with his band Block 16, and obviously he was ecstatic when Mike Portnoy agreed to do it. And at the same time, Mike Portnoy got Ray and the rest of his band to give him a place to stay using a sob story. He told us that his mother was dying of cancer, his wife was divorcing him, and that Dream Theater had cancelled its tour because of the war, so I kind of felt sorry for him. The ruse, however, quickly fell apart when it came time to actually play the drums. You can have all kinds of fake IDs and details about a person's life memories, but you're just not gonna sit behind a drum kit and imitate the performance of a person who is considered by many to be one of the best drummers in the world. It's just not gonna happen. And in Ray Freeman's words, he sounded worse than my grandmother. And that's when everything started to really click. He noticed that the tattoos on this guy didn't quite match up with Mike Portnoy's actual tattoos. He noticed that he had things missing from his apartment, and he looked online and he saw that there were reports of an imposter Mike Portnoy going around. So this guy calls the police and they make a plan to finally catch this guy. What they did was they had Ray Freeman pick up the fake Mike Portnoy in his car while he's on the phone with the real Mike Portnoy to coordinate where they're gonna wind up. They drive back to Ray's apartment in Queens, the police show up, and they get the fake Mike Portnoy, who is still at this moment insisting that he really is Mike Portnoy. It turns out that the imposter was a man named Anthony Mendez, whose picture he had, unfortunately, this is really the only picture that you can find of him nowadays. He was charged with criminal impersonation and grand larceny with $100,000 bail. And with all that, you would think that this would be the last we'd hear of him, but it wasn't! Anthony Mendez once again started up his fake Mike Portnoy scam in 2006. Mike Portnoy received an email from a concerned fan that he shared on his message board thinking, here we go again. This guy came over to my house the other day claiming to be Mike from Dream Theater. This guy looked like a wreck. He was clearly on some heavy drugs. I just couldn't believe that it would actually be Mike Portnoy from Dream Theater. You must be thinking this is a joke, but it's not. The guy maintained that he was Mike Portnoy the whole time he was hanging out at my house. I totally would have assumed this guy was lying, but he knew everything about the band. Tours, album covers, and their meanings, etc. Please tell me this guy was an imposter. I'd hate to think that the real-life Mike Portnoy is a drugged-out wreck. And of course, having dealt with this before, Mike Portnoy was sent in a bit of a panic, worrying about his family's safety, his reputation, but thankfully for him, this was the last time it appears that anybody had ever heard from the Mike Portnoy imposter again. So what actually did happen to this guy? Did he get caught again? Did he turn over a new leaf? I mean, if you ask me, considering the risky lifestyle this guy had and the heavy drug usage, it's very likely that Anthony Mendez is simply no longer with us. But we don't know for sure. YLM number 3. I'm back to talk about some of your lost media suggestions. It's been a while since the last one, which had some pretty wild ramifications. I wound up doing Howie Mandel's podcast, in which he responded to the mystery of Little Howie's reading adventure. I'll put a link to that in the description. Today though, I want to talk about some lost music. This month I want to talk about some solved ones, including the King of the Hill song that I spoke about a few months back. And I've also got a Numetal song and a song that one of you guys sang for me. And of course, if you have any lost media suggestions of your own, please send me an email to wanglostmedia@gmail.com. Anyway, let's get to it. Back in April of this year, I spoke about a pair of pop-punk songs that appeared in an episode of King of the Hill.
Let nature and parole officers take care of the rest. I'll go tell them.
This mystery actually got solved relatively quickly, and I posted about it on the community tab and other social media, but I never got around to actually talking about it in the video, so ever since then, I keep getting emails about people telling me that it's been solved, so it's time to just put this in a video. At first, you got a lot of promising guesses thrown around and some more people digging through bands' discographies, but it was 2 days later that a guitar player named Christopher Wiley posted this video to his channel. A video where he plays along to the track, which he names as Veterans of Foreign Film. It's only a 13-second clip, but it's obviously a much clearer sounding recording that we can hear in the King of the Hill episode, and it's also longer. So clearly this was pretty legit. And a few days later, on May 1st, the band named Measure would re-release their old EP that this came from, which included the other song that appeared in the episode, entitled Between Shadows and Silhouettes, as well as a third song entitled Keep the Change, You Filthy Animal. I'll put a link to the Bandcamp in the description so you guys can check it out yourselves. And Christopher also remarked on his YouTube channel, "Thank you for helping us be a part of something so wonderful and hilarious. It's not every day you find out the internet is attempting to unearth your work from more than a decade ago." And funny enough, it turns out that I actually already knew their drummer Sandra. I had met her a few years back through my current band's vocalist, so this is just some real crazy small world shit. The next one comes to me from the Dark Iron Gains meme page on Instagram. The admin of the page sent me a message about a song for a meme he had posted back in March.
I'm sick and crushed, I crush it up. Yeah, see, I throw it up. I'm in the cut, I'm from the brush, I'm from the town, I'm from the mud. It's going down, I'm going up, I'm going up, I'm showing up, I'm showing up, I'm showing love.
This is such a catchy song that it got stuck in my head as I was writing the script for this video. So clearly, not knowing what this is would drive you crazy. Like, the only way you're gonna hear this song, you gotta bookmark the meme and go back to it when you feel like listening to it. Which is exactly what quite a few people did. He told me that every single week since he posted that meme, he would get tons of DMs of people asking him to name the song, which of course, he had no idea what it was. Nor did anybody else in the comments. And of course you got Shazam turning up nothing, and any attempt to search the lyrics also turning up nothing. And the interesting thing about this one, I feel like in a lot of lost music cases, it's usually something that's much older, but you listen to this song, and you could tell that this is very obviously something much more modern. When I initially spoke to Dark Iron Gains about this song, I noted that I assumed this is probably something from an obscure artist that was on either SoundCloud or Bandcamp. And sure enough, between the time I started working on this topic and the time I made this video, someone dug it up. I'm not sure if he's the first person to actually identify it, but it is the earliest comment I see mentioning it, by Johnny Sloan identifying it as Crush Red Priest by CatScan on SoundCloud. I'll link that song in the description as well. Note though that this version of the song is the original slower, lower pitched version of it. The version from the meme is Night Chord, so if you want the fast version, I guess you could take this and speed it up yourself, or, you know, bookmark the meme still. This one comes to me from a viewer named John. The most mysterious nu metal song.
White trash.
Wanna know what you can't explain? You're from the close to the head, they cause damage to your brain. Use a picture down, just for kicks. When you use a picture down, you was only 6.
So this is one that spread from P2P file sharing services, largely in 2007 and 2008, and primarily on the service Ares. And it was commonly found with one of two names: Deftones, White Trash, Resident Evil, or Korn, Deftones, Slipknot, Limp Bizkit, Link Park, Rare. Man, you get all those huge nu metal bands on the same track together, that's gotta be the craziest collab of all time. So back in the P2P file sharing days, there was kind of a trick that smaller local bands would do to get noticed. You know, you put the name of your band and the song, and in parentheses, you're like, for fans of Slipknot, Limp Bizkit, Korn, or whatever bands you think people are going to be searching for that'll like your music. But then what winds up happening sometimes is some of these songs get around but eventually get misattributed to one of these bands that are, you know, for fans of. And there were some bands that got themselves nice little followings like that. I mean, one particular example that I remember is this band called V-Mob. They had this song Reflection that was always labeled as being a Slipknot song, even though very obviously it wasn't Slipknot. In the case of V-Mob though, the record got corrected pretty thoroughly on that. So the people who liked that song, despite being mislabeled as Slipknot, often eventually found V-Mob. But that's not the case for a lot of these songs, including White Trash. A song that's very obviously not Deftones or Korn or Link Park or any of these bands that are listed. And searching for the lyrics only takes you to old forum posts from 2007 and 2008, including one on Newgrounds. Posts of other people trying unsuccessfully to identify this song. A lot of the comments on the YouTube uploads of this song note that the singer kinda sounds like the guy from Nullset. Although, frankly, a lot of the vocalists from this time period just kinda sound like each other. I feel like I saw bands that sound like this opening up for nu metal tours all the time back in the day, or even handing out demos outside. But despite the fact that a lot of bands did sound like this, the Nullset theory was kinda interesting to me for a minute, because of something that was posted to my subreddit by a user named Bowman Boas. You see, before Nullset was Nullset, they had a different name. Gangsta Bitch Barbie. Gangsta Bitch Barbie. Like, how do you not miss this period in time? We have to return. But Bowman's Bows was only able to find one track for the album that Nullset released as Gangsta Bitch Barbie, a track entitled Suplex Ninja, which of course was not the song. And hearing that track, the lead became a little less interesting to me because, in my opinion, the Gangsta Bitch Barbie recording was a lot more polished than whatever this White Trash song was. At the very least, in my opinion, there's no way it would have been from the same recording, and sure enough, I did manage to find the full album, and this song is not on there. In fact, as it turns out, Nullset has officially said that this is not them. There's not really much else in terms of leads for this song, although one thing of note, if you look at the comments on the YouTube uploads for this song, you'll find that most of the comments are in Spanish. That's because Ares, the service that this was usually found on, was more popular in the Spanish-speaking world. Therefore, if anybody throughout the years went on a quest to identify the song and they were actually successful, the odds are pretty good that they are a native Spanish speaker. As for the band itself, to me this sounds like this was most certainly a demo. I think the most likely scenario is that this band never got particularly big, and mislabeling themselves on file sharing services was an attempt to self-promote. This last song comes from one of my Patreon subscribers, Sir Tony. Hey, I have a kind of odd request. There's a song I know the chorus to and thought artist of. I've tried searching the lyrics, the artist I thought it was by, tried asking r/find this song, I think that's the subname, and got 0 responses. There was a period of time 10ish years ago when I was really into leaked unreleased track from my favorite artist. Found my favorite Big Time Rush song that way. Yes, I still love BTR at 24. The song I'm trying to find might have been unreleased/leaked, and that's why I can't find it. If I send you a clip of me singing the part I know, is there any way you could include it at the end of a video or something? It's driving me up a wall not being able to find this damn song. In Sertoni's email, they added that the artist was possibly Jessica Mawboy or Christina DeBarge, but it did not turn up in any of their discographies. And here's the recording of Tony singing the song.
There's this awkward silence, I'm trying to hide it. If you only knew that I'm slowly breaking. I hear our song on the radio, and I can't hardly breathe, because our song on the radio keeps reminding me how it used to be and what we were.
And here's what I found interesting. When I tried Googling some of the lyrics to this song, I wound up on a listing from 2009 on eLyricsWorld.com by a user named Sasha. It was labeled as being Christina DeBarge, song on the radio. And you look at the chorus for this song, and the part Tony is singing, it skips every other line, making me think there's some kind of call and response thing going on there, but the lyrics are matched up. This has to be the song. So I looked for this song, and I come across a song by Christina DeBarge called Radio. Not song on the radio like this one was labeled, and I listened to it, and it's a completely different song with completely different lyrics. So, Christina DeBarge puts out her first album in 2009, entitled Exposed. Does not contain a song entitled Song on the Radio, and that's all she releases until 2012. I thought that perhaps the lyrics might have simply been mislabeled, so I gave the whole album a listen, and nothing matches up. This song was just not on that album. And any search for a song on the radio by Christina DeBarge either leads me to the song radio or this very lyrics listing. And I assume Sir Tony came across this very same lead, which is why Christina DeBarge was a suspect at all. That being said, we do know a few things. The fact that a complete other person came up with these same lyrics tells me that this is most likely a real song that Sir Tony isn't misremembering or making up. And I also think it's very likely that in 2009, this person, Sasha, had misidentified the song as being by Christina DeBarge, and possibly even the song name. And honestly, I tried a bunch of different permutations of lyrics for the song, and artist names, and song titles, and I just can't seem to get anything. I'm coming up dry here, so let me know if you got anything. And anyway, that's all for now. At the turn of the century, nu metal was at its peak, and two of the bands leading the pack, Slipknot and Limp Bizkit. Everything was going great for these guys until one day, Fred Durst, the frontman of Limp Bizkit, decided to call Slipknot's fans fat, ugly losers. Despite, the two bands sharing a lot of the same fans. And this would cause one of the first great online wars of the 2000s. Slipknot fans versus Limp Bizkit fans. So today, I'm gonna hop in my time machine and watch this old feud play out through a series of old websites and emails littered with slurs and misspellings. And if you want to be there live for the next recording of Angel Fire Adventures, be sure to follow me on Twitch. This new blue light bulb might be a little bit too much. I got a Aurora Borealis going on. Fred Durst. Oh yeah, there's a dick jerk. Oh, there's like a MS Paint dick jerking off into Fred Durst's mouth. The widest urethra I've ever seen. They're the opposite of Hank Hill. Hell yeah. Fred Durst sucks. Slipknot fans are fat, ugly. I think that's what he actually said, actually. I think that might have been the quote that set this whole thing off. Fred Durst, Slipknot, fat, ugly kids. Group singer Corey Taylor told the crowd at Slipknot's New York show Monday night a story about an anonymous rock star. Telling the audience, he said, and I quote, Slipknot's fans are a bunch of fat, ugly kids. If you had a Venn diagram of the Slipknot and the Limp Bizkit fan base at the time, it wasn't a perfect circle. Like, you had like the more bro-y crowd on the Limp Bizkit side and the more hot topic-y, gothy crowd on the Slipknot side. But there's a significant overlap there, so Fred Durst probably roasted a lot of his own fucking fans in that comment. Taylor continued. So I said, Fred, you may have a lot of money, be all over the world, but when you talk shit about Slipknot and our fans, we will kill you. Well, the Slipknot fans had a very strong internet presence. They were none too happy about it. The Spanish Association against Fred Durst. We got our Spanish backup army pissing on the Limp Bizkit sign? Why is there a big metal Limp Bizkit sign just like in the world? Enter the sick realm of Slipknot. Fred talks a lot of shit. Fred thinks he is all that. Fred is an idiot. After high school, he briefly served in the Navy, got married, had a child, and divorced. Are there pictures of Fred Durst in the Navy? We're in the Navy, y'all! The Orange County Register called him illiterate, and the Weekly Standard named him a Fred Dunce. Can we get a fact check on that? Fred Dunce. Weekly Standard. He did it all for the etymologist Nookie. Durst, lead singer of the rap metal band Limp Bizkit, was widely mocked after he deviated from the script at the Grammy Awards to offer an anti-war sentiment that grated on the ears of grammarians. I just really hope we're all in agreement that this war should go away as soon as possible. Wordsmiths everywhere agreed. Durst is dumb, they said, as we bombed all kinds of fucking kids around the world. But Fred Durst is dumb, that's the problem. Barry Coltnow of the Orange County Register called him illiterate. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution said its copy desk was in agreement that agreeance isn't a word. A bunch of fucking nerds. I feel like us in the chat, we're all in agreement. These guys are a bunch of fucking wieners. Barry Coltnow. This him? I think so. You look like fucking Chuck E. Cheese. There was supposed to be a stream about how, you know, Slipknot and Limp Bizkit had a feud. And Slipknot, to me, is cooler than Limp Bizkit. Now it's like I gotta defend Fred Durst from all these fucking dorks. Let's do our own cool, non-nerd cool guy search. Agreeance, is that a word? Fred Durst. I don't think Fred Durst made this dictionary. How does it feel, word experts, to be owned by Fred Durst? Agreement. While agreeance is a word, it hasn't often been used since the 19th century. You know what that means? That means Fred Durst is cultured. After all, he is a professional lyricist, so he would know these things. Hagit Bohr, chairwoman of the University of Southern California's Linguistics Department, also defended Durst, calling his word choice innovative. Oh, the day after they published the fucking correction. They published the correction. Rocker's grammar okay after all. The experts are in agreement. Rocker Fred Durst was right after all. Durst, lead singer of the rap metal band Limp Bizkit, was widely mocked after he offered an anti-war sentiment at the Grammy Awards. I just really hope we're all in agreement that this war should go away as soon as possible. Columnists everywhere, including one calling him Fred Dunce, blasted him, saying agreeance isn't a word. But the North American editor of the Oxford English Dictionary told the New York Observer that agreeance is, in fact, a word. Although an obsolete one, since about 1714. Damn, we pushed this back even further now. Limp Bizkit, Fred Durst, one media nerds, word experts, fucking big fat L. I'm going to make the Woodstock people go, so that's how you do it. Alright guys, do you remember how Woodstock 1999 went? Woodstock 1999. Fire!
The crowds are blowing up CO2 tanks from the tractor.
What is Slipknot doing? At a record signing in New York City, Corey took one of the markers used to sign with and wrote "Fuck Fred" on the palm of his hand and constantly waved at every person coming to see them. Fucking owned, man. Fred's sorry. Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit is reported as saying that he is sorry for saying anything bad to other bands following the terrorist attacks in America. More shockingly, he said he plans to work with artists such as Eminem, the Goo Goo Dolls, and Slipknot. There is nothing that is more an artifact of this period in time than the fact that 9/11 resolved a feud between Limp Bizkit and Slipknot. Oh, Newgrounds. Slipknot versus Limp Bizkit on Newgrounds. Yo, I saw this back in the day. Holy shit. I remember this clear as fucking day. Yes! Yes! Corey Taylor chopped. He hits him with the chainsaw and his entire body explodes. Holy shit, I cannot believe I remember this. Got bored, heard about Fred's shit talking and made this a while back. Hope you like. Oh, anti-Fred Durst section, there we go. Hell yeah. You are one of the billions of maggots who think Fred Durst should fuck off and go to hell. Then you should know it's not just Slipknot fans he screws with, it's the whole fucking world. Fred's just got too big-headed and thought he was better than the music, so he started mouthing off every single band there is. But then, he started on Slipknot's this page dedicated from us maggots to Fred Durst. That's the classic Dave Correa artwork that was fucking everywhere at that period in time. You know what? I'm just gonna search fuck Fred Durst. The anti-Fred Durst movement, Angel Fire. I created this site for one reason and one reason only. To tell people why others and I don't like Fred Durst. Not Limp Bizkit. Some people like Limp Bizkit but not Fred, and that's okay with me, although I personally don't like Limp Bizkit anymore. I do still enjoy $3 Bill, but that is the past. Some stories and opinions on why others hate Fred Durst. Story number 1. He is such a fucking ass. Way back when LB were on Warped, I too loved them. I have and still listen to $3 Bill, y'all. Anyway, he's a fucking pedophile. A friend of mine, younger, went to see them on Warped when she was in 8th grade. He was coming on to her, asking her if she wanted to come back to the trailer, etc, etc. It was gross. I just told him to back off and we left. I've heard stories like this everywhere. Holy shit, man. Come on to people your own age. Jesus. I'm glad someone else realizes what an egotistical asshole he is. I blame him alone for LB selling out. Number 2. Hell yeah, he'll be autographing the covers of Teen Beat magazine and hitting on the 8-year-old girls that own the mag at the same... What a fucking sell... So this person is calling him a pedophile, like, giving a pedo accusation, but then calling him a sellout. And the same thing, like, I feel like one accusation kinda outweighs the other accusation of him selling out. Alright, let's explore the rest of this webpage, though, can we? Hell yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Welcome to the realm of Slipknot. If you have not joined my army against the ASKA by now, click here to do so. I have over 600 maggots. Be a part of the team. If you don't know what the ASKA is, it's the anti-Slipknot army. Uh-oh. Fuck those guys. We gotta learn what's going on. The anti-Slipknot army is actually this one guy who made a webpage about how stupid Slipknot and all their fans are. This guy needs mega bad publicity. Help me. I shall make this section of my page dedicated to him. Hell yeah, fuck this guy. This guy is 18 and he lives in England. To visit his webpage, go here. I feel like it's not gonna be up, but it might be archived. This is like the original cancel culture here. Like, you didn't have Twitter or Facebook or any of that shit to cancel somebody. You literally had to make a web page. Anti-slipknotarmy.co.uk. Yeah, it's not there anymore. Fingers crossed for the Internet Archive. It's here. Alright. Do you like bands where the singer just kind of gargles vomit into the microphone? Do you like stupid masks and boiler suits? Do you call yourself a maggot? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then fuck off. There's nothing for you here. The anti-Slipknot army is a group of like-minded people who think that Slipknot are shit. We are fully aware that this is just an opinion. Be aware that if you send us hate mail, your inane ramblings will almost certainly make us laugh. Please email the Aska at one of the following addresses. Hate mail, let's do it. Subject, no subject. First of all, you can go fuck yourself. Slipknot is just another underground band who kicks fucking ass. Hell yeah, Slipknot is just another underground band that kicks fucking ass and won't sell out in like half the bands that are out in today's music industry, so fuck off, because you will never bring down a band, because a band has never been brought down, and it sure in hell will not be brought down due to some fucking European French fucker, whatever the fuck you are. His retort, that last sentence speaks volumes about the ignorance of certain Americans. This fucking European French fucker, whatever I am, is from England, and firmly believes that Slipknot will not sell out. Not again, at least. Subject, none. Ha! Slipknot fans are so stupid, right? I'm so sure that we're the ones spelling things like a 10-year-old girl on our site. Slipknot fans, all they do is vomit and scream and shit. Wow, so stupid. You are so perfect. How about this? You give me one reason other than I will look stupid taking out your aggression like that. Maybe I will consider what you are saying. And oh yeah, the people that wear Slipknot shirts are, yes, just like you wearing your Abercrombie bullshit. We are all walking billboards. Get it right, motherfucker. And lastly, if you wanted attention, you should have just raped the donkey. I'm so sure that your beloved media would have picked that up in a second. Nice pick. Okay, who the fuck are you to think you can judge Slipknot? Or is it just that your bands just fucking suck too damn much? Man, you must have no fucking life, dude. For all we know, you guys could be a group of F-slurs living in an apartment sucking each other's dick as we speak. You know what? I'm gonna put this plain and simple, just as Slipknot told Fred. You ever talk shit about Slipknot again, I'll kill you myself, you son of a bitch. Here's 2 words that maybe you will understand. Fuck you. It's worth that the last 2 words, fuck and you, in that order would have been made absolutely huge, presumably to help groups of living in apartments sucking each other's dicks and that. Like, we obviously do all the time because Brandon says so, understand? I'm going to put this plain and simple. Just like Fry at Futurama said, to a pet shop owner once. That's a stupid animal. You're stupid. You're stupid. You're stupid. Okay, that has no relevance, but I like it. And you are stupid. Hell yeah! Slipknot rules, F got. So you think Slipknot sucks? What do you like? Some dancing around on stage with his ass hanging out, talking in some language that only homies can understand? Slipknot is the shit. Slipknot is the shit. Us maggots are going to fuck you. Fuck off. Well done, you managed to be racist, homophobic, and unbearably stupid in the course of one single email. I'm so very glad that I'm not you. Subject, no subject. Dude, you need to everyone, dude, you need to shut your mouth, because Slipknot can't help it that they're better than your little F-lovin' Linkin Park preppy shit. Cause you just some queer prep who's very misguided. No one can help that you are a bunch of preppy babbies that don't know good music when you hear it. Or at least he slags off Linkin Park. The Backstreet Boys of rock better than Slipknot though. Subject. Oh, this guy wrote a subject. Subject. You suck cock. Yes, you are gay and fuck guys. Yes, you are gay and you fuck guys. You think if you came over here and played, over here being the US, you probably get the shit kicked out of you. Why? Because you are a white ass motherfucker that needs to die. So go fuck off. Your site sucks. What is its purpose? No one gives a shit about you except your Fs. And if you ever talk Slipknot like that, I mean, again, I have hacker friends, and they would easily fuck your site up. And don't think I'm bluffing. Remove the link about Slipknot, or your site gets jacked, okay? Go fuck your queen. Unrealist. No, I'm not gay. My opinion differs from yours. Get over it. So hack me. Now that my site is back, I welcome a nice big hacking. Give me a shout, I'll be fucking my queen. Subject. Subject, fuckface. Hey, what's up, fuckface? What? Yo, I'm gonna start every email like that. That's so good. Well, you better put this on your hate mail page because I want to see it. Well, first of all, man, you must be a fucking loser to put out a website like this, man. You totally do not have a life, and you need to realize that. No one cares what you think about Slipknot, and no one even cares about you. You don't really see the nature of Slipknot. You take a look and comment, never actually listen to the music. That is why people like you equal shit. Look, it's not Slipknot's fault you're a fucking loser, so quit fucking trying to get attention by making an anti-Slipknot site, fuckface. Find something else to do, pussy. Well, I'm out. If you want to contact me, go ahead. My email address is Maggot Court Member. I would love an email back from you. Maybe we can chat, pussy. Later. Slipknot rules your mom. Subject 0123456778. Listen here, motherfucker. If you're gonna stand up and talk so much shit, then you'd better be ready for a motherfucking war. I personally would rip that cocky head off your shoulders. I am one person alone. What you may not realize, Slipknot has a rather large following of faithful maggots. You are fucking with an entire legion of... Yo, this is like the fucking anonymous prototype. We are legion, we are Slipknot maggots. You are one loud, obsessed, jealous piece of shit. Think about who you're fucking with. You wouldn't talk your shit in front of the Knot themselves. They would erase your sorry ass. Laugh all you fucking want at me, because I do not care what you or anyone else thinks of me. This is your opinion, and I respect that, but you've got only talk. Talk is cheap, you piece of garbage. Let me see you take real action. I will fuck you up and leave you to bleed to death, and think about your sorry existence. You are nothing in this world. If you continue to make a fuss, you will soon learn you opened your mouth about the wrong group of people. I will not waste my time with your kind. Only one of us walks away. Sincerely, 666 maggot number 7. Oh, they got the maggot number. I remember there was a website. I don't know if it was universal and if like the system was like obeyed by everyone, but there was a website that would give you your own like maggot number. I had one. I don't remember what mine was, but you would get a number. And Slipknot fans are the original gamers. You know what? I guess I can cap this off by just looking into the majesty of the Fred Durst Dreamcasts. Oh, there we go. That's Fred Durst signing the Dreamcast. That's one of them in the package. Bid on a piece of history. The Fred Durst signed Dreamcast. I gotta get myself one of these. Oh, I remember these ads. SegaNet, with Dreamcast being like one of the first. That was like the big selling point of the Dreamcast when it came out, that you could play online. And a part of that was, if you get your ass kicked, it's probably me on the other end of the line. Fred Durst, SegaNet member. You get your Dreamcast, you might be playing with Fred Durst. And maybe if you're really lucky, you might be playing against Fred Durst on a Dreamcast that he signed himself. They do pop up on eBay from time to time, but there's one of them in a museum. At least one of them. Fred Durst Dreamcast Museum. Where is this museum that has the Fred Durst Dreamcast? Alright, it's... Yes. Reddit, my local museum has a Dreamcast signed by Fred Durst. But then some of them he signed the plastic on the outside, some of them he signed the actual Dreamcast. Thanks for entering our contest. Per our conversation, please find enclosed a Sega Dreamcast system, which is a limited edition, numbered, and autographed by Fred Durst and Limp Bizkit. Have a happy and safe holiday, and remember, dreams cast can come true. Donated by Deborah Fenner to the Sloan Museum. This Sega Dreamcast was autographed by Fred Durst, lead singer of the rock band Limp Bizkit. The donor's son won the video game console in a contest at Universal Music at the Genesee Valley Mall in 1999. The gaming system and its tie to the mall can be used to talk about the shift away from a downtown shopping district in the 1970s and the ensuing growth of Flint's West Side. Oh, and Limp Bizkit rocks. Ever since I started covering the most mysterious song on the internet last July, I've received tons of messages from people trying to bring my attention to other lost songs. And frankly, there's tons of these out there, some of them sought after as long as the mysterious song, if not longer. And I started thinking about how kind of completely arbitrary it was that I decided to pick that song to cover. Honestly, it just happened to be the first one that grabbed my attention. And with that in mind, I've decided to highlight some more of these mysterious songs that have fallen through the cracks throughout the years. And while progress is being made in finding the source of the original mysterious song, maybe we can get some leads on these as well. So for this video, let's take a look at some more mysterious songs, an unidentified metal track, a mislabeled J-Rock song, and an unknown Filthy Frank track. This first song is often labeled as the most mysterious metal song or the most mysterious power metal song on the internet. I was wondering why, despite the song being around since the 80s and having an online presence as far back as 2009, why so many people started hitting me up about it recently. And apparently it's because not too long ago, it was covered by Ian Christie on his SiriusXM liquid metal show Roots, which covers the history of metal. He became interested in this mystery when a fan sent him a recording that they claimed to have recorded from the radio station Z-Rock in Chicago in 1987. Let's take a listen. I think the song is awesome and I would love to hear the rest of the album this came from. The Iron Maiden influence is very plain to hear, and at the same time there were a lot of bands that sounded like this at this time. If you listen to metal, it just kind of has that familiar sound that made a lot of people go, this sounds kind of familiar, but I can't really place it. People look through their collections of obscure metal demos and compilations and compare it against bands they are familiar with, but nothing. People also attempted to find it through the lyrics, which sounds like something about Fall of the King or a fallen king, and this led some investigators to a band named Red Baron, who had a song called Fall of the King and somewhat of a familiar sound. And this one was actually debunked by Ian with one of the strangest coincidences. The guy who sent this mystery tape coincidentally dated the cousin of somebody in this band, and he says no way. Plus, someone contacted the guitarist who says they never recorded their song and that the lyrics are about bringing down a big shot, not really swords and battle stuff. So that rules out Red Baron. Searching for the lyrics also led to a post made in 2009. In the song identification megathread on the Encyclopedia Metallum forums made by Sled1025. Hi all, I have been going through my cassette collection and found a couple of miscellaneous tapes of songs I recorded off the radio, Z-Rock and college radio, back in the mid to late 80s. I've been able to identify every song but one, and it's a really cool song. Can anybody help me figure it out? It's driving me insane. One would think the title is The Fall of the King, but no amount of searching for that or googling the lyrics has returned a valid result. The singer sounds very familiar, so if someone can identify it, I'll probably end up feeling really stupid, but I've been trying to figure this one out for quite a while, and I don't think I ever did know who this was by. Nothing else on the tape is newer than 1988, so that probably dates it to sometime before then. It's definitely 80s metal and fairly heavy. I have transcribed the lyrics to the first verse and chorus and included a link to the MP3. And although the rapid share link he posted is dead now, his interpretation of the lyrics matches up with this song. There are some that theorize that Sled1025 might have had a higher quality version of the song in his MP3 that would have helped with the search, but honestly I think it's very likely that this guy and the new guy looking for the song are the same person, and therefore the same recording. One potential lead here, aside from, just hoping that someone who made the song or knew the song happens to hear this, is people who worked at Z-Rock. Ian Christie reached out to Mike Payne, who worked at Z-Rock in those days, but unfortunately Mike Payne had no recollection of this song. He also brought up the possibility of Pat Dawsey, who might have played it at Z-Rock at the time. At the time of me making this video though, nobody has managed to get a response from Pat regarding this mystery. And actually, as I was working on this video, another even more promising lead popped up. This one posted on the Colosseum forums thread about it. The Ripper says, "It seems we are getting very close to solving the mystery thanks to Jonas Lunaboy Kozlowskis, who very cleverly searched for the protected copyright material. So, it seems that the song was written, words and music, in 1987 by a guy called Bernard E. Cavazos, and entitled, apparently, King's Fall. The guy hailed from Texas, indeed as I initially stated, so I should be receiving a half prize here when everyone else voted for Chicago, Canada, etc. Dan, I'm sending over my want list, well, half of it. As of now, the only Bernard Cavazos from Texas that's popped up is a gynecologist. And yeah, I know doctors play music too, but unfortunately this Bernard Cavazos has a different middle initial. So unfortunately, Dr. Cavazos did not make our song. But if anybody knows a Bernard E. Cavazos who played in a metal band in 1987, let us know. After the release of my most recent During Grey video, I had a lot of people hit me up just to kind of look back on weird stuff from the online J-Rock community back in the day. For example, that woman who claimed that she was possessed by the spirit of Hide, the guitarist of X Japan, after he died. Actually, if I remember properly, she said she was reincarnated as him, which makes no sense because when he died, she was already a fully grown adult. And it's a video I would love to cover, but it seems like there's not much of her left online. But something else that caught my attention was a message about another mislabeled song. I received an email from the Cthulhu Loser speaking about a song that floated around on Napster claiming to be from the Vampire Hunter D soundtrack entitled Medieval Song. But it wasn't actually from the Vampire Hunter D soundtrack. At some point he lost the track and started searching for it again, and this time it popped up as a Glaze song. Here it is. I don't know how familiar you are with the band Glay, but this definitely does not sound like them, and it can't be found on any of their albums to my knowledge. And if you look at Last FM, this song is attributed to Malice Miser, who, as much as this song doesn't sound like Glay, it sounds even less like Malice Miser. I also found a post on the Scape forums in 2013 by a user named Jamar who was looking for the song. In his post, he mentions that it was also attributed to Gakt, who, if you're not aware, was also in Malice Miser for a time. He also mentions that this track found its way into people's collections in a similar way to how Sea of Retards did, just bundled it among full discographies and such. Jamar also points out that the composer for the first Vampire Hunter D is Tetsuya Komuro in his first solo project, so if it were from the original Vampire Hunter D, that's who made it. But it doesn't appear to be from that soundtrack, and frankly the production doesn't even sound similar. I also sat down and listened to the Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust soundtrack and found nothing, as well as the soundtrack from the PlayStation game, and I got a little excited because I found one song that's kinda similar, but it's not the song, and it's not in the soundtrack at all. Some leads also points to a song called Peace of Mind by a rapper named Maroney. However, it appears that he merely sampled this track, as his song came out after the song was already floating around on file sharing services. But what that could indicate is that maybe it's simply a track from a production library. So basically, I'm at a complete dead end with this one. To me, it seems like this song is much more likely to be from a soundtrack than from a band, but I'm just not sure which soundtrack. Several years ago, Filthy Frank made a video entitled How to Pick Up Girls in 30 Different Cultures. Unfortunately, like a lot of his videos, it's been purged from his channel. But thankfully, it's been reposted, and this video contains what's probably the biggest mystery of Frank's career. As the title indicates, Frank shows us how to pick up every flavor of woman from around the world. But what's of particular interest here is Kenya. People have been searching for the song he's dancing to for years with no avail. It's been reported that Joji himself has no idea where he got that, and he's kind of sick of hearing about it. So the first question you gotta ask is, what language is this and what are they saying? And personally, you might be surprised to find out that I know absolutely nothing about African languages, so I'm going off of trusting what other people have said here, but it appears to be a Bantu language. I've seen conflicting opinions about which one specifically it is, but every suggestion it's all Bantu. And I've seen two different versions of the translation. The first is, the child is born, the boy is taken care of. And the other is, the child has been born for us, the boy has been sent to us. The latter of which some people have interpreted to mean it could be a Christmas song. I've seen a few people claim that the song is Kiwami by Bobby Wine, But that seems wrong to me, because you can listen to the song on YouTube. I'm not going to play it on here because it's going to get claimed if I do it. But the song is on YouTube, and while it's similar to the one Frank used, it's not the same song, and in fact the vocalist doesn't even really sound like the same guy. Another point of interest in this case is a video posted on December 21st of 2015 by a channel named TM2. The video is called New African Cristiano Ronaldo, Amazing Long Shot HD, and it's a clip where a kid kicks a ball and sends it nowhere near the goal. And when he botches the kick, the song starts playing. Several people ask him where he got the song, and eventually he replies, "Mate, I bought this song on Deep Web. It cost me £10. Obviously, he's probably just fucking with this guy. It's probably just a joke and he grabbed a clip off of Filthy Frank's video, right? But there is that one guy that's like, oh, Deep Web, let's hear him out. Huge erection writes, I think that this guy actually found this song on the Deep Web. You see, this song is either from Uganda, Kenya, or Malawi, all not with great internet freedom or freedom in general. The lyrics are, Ono omwana atzuludwa, omulenzi atuludwa, Nyanja, Swahili, or Bantu language, which is generally agreed to be, the child has been born for us, the boy has been sent to us, which is clearly suggesting his song is a Christian Christmas song. Now, I'm too lazy to look any of this up, but my theory is that one of the 3 countries this song was made in, Christianity is censored by the government, therefore forcing the artist to upload it to the deep web. Maybe I'm thinking too much of this. And while I'm open to the possibility of the African Christian deep web, I'm pretty sure this guy is just messing with you. And that's basically all we know about this song. Of all the songs I spoke about in this video, this is probably the one that's had the longest sustained search with the most eyes on it for the longest time, and yet we have nothing. I can't say that I have a massive amount of viewers that live in Africa, but maybe someone who sees this video will just happen to recognize it. But anyway, that's all for now. Let me know what you think about this type of video, because there's a lot of songs out there like this that I could make more videos like this on. I think the most underappreciated aspect of Napster and services like it was how it wasn't just good for finding music you were looking for, it was good for finding stuff that you didn't even know you wanted. Not just for new and upcoming artists who would often tag their music with other artists' names as for fans of, but also for more obscure tracks from your favorite artists. I remember coming across Slipknot's indie release with their original vocalist Anders, Mate Feet Kill Repeat, and then later on an unreleased demo track from them called Snapstar to make the rounds. And finding these things gave me an appetite for finding other obscure tracks from different bands that I liked. But the thing about these kinds of tracks is that a lot of times they were mislabeled, to the point where they're famously attached to artists who didn't even make them. Take the System of a Down Legend of Zelda song, for instance.
Link, come to town, come to save the Princess Zelda.
Of course, you probably know it wasn't actually made by them, and there's a lot of other tracks just like this. So for this episode of Tales from the Internet, I want to take a look at some famous mislabeled Napster MP3s.
Stop all the downloading!
It cannot be understated how big of an impact Napster, Winamx, and all the other file sharing services had on my life, and probably a lot of yours. All of a sudden, my music collection isn't just limited to what I can afford or borrow from friends or find on the radio. Now it's anything I want whenever I wanted, and the stuff I didn't even know that I wanted. And one of the biggest examples of this, for me, was J-Rock and Visual K. This became one of my favorite types of music, and I found it completely by accident. At some point, I was looking for some traditional Japanese music for some reason or another, and I accidentally came across the track Silent Jealousy by X Japan, who's now one of my favorite bands in the world, probably the best concert I've ever been to in my life, although I didn't get to see them back in the Hide days. I did get to see them with Sugizo, which was fucking awesome. And after I found them, I fell down this rabbit hole where I was just finding every Japanese band that I could, including Dorian Gray, who would also wind up becoming one of my favorite bands. But the thing is, in this early stage, I wasn't downloading entire albums. I was piecing these albums together, file by individual file. And there were a few resources at that time, at least ones that I knew about, to really guide me in the right direction. And this lack of a roadmap also made it prime for fake tracks to spread. In particular, there is one track that probably every single person who was a Darren Gray fan at this time, was aware of, a track called Sea of Retards. If you don't know, here's how it sounded. You wanna know how stupid I am? For years and years, I actually thought that was a real Darren Gray track. I mean, they distinguished themselves from other bands like them with a lot of noisy, dissonant, experimental ideas, so it wouldn't be too far-fetched for them to have something like this. In all likelihood, this track was made by someone making fun of that characteristic of the band, but I guess it fooled enough people. And no one seems to be 100% sure on where it actually came from. A potential origin story that I heard was that someone posted it as a fake leak to troll a J-Rock forum. This track makes its way to Napster, labeled as a Darren Gray song, and enough people are tricked by it that for years, a lot of the Western J-Rock fanbase actually thinks this is a real Darren Gray track. I don't know if this is a true story or not, but it's completely believable to me. I can just think back to the culture of these J-Rock forums and how people spoke on there, and I just picture a person writing like a 5-paragraph dissertation on Sea of Retards, and why this is actually a very deep and thought-provoking song. There's probably someone out there who actually thought the voice score actually symbolized something, like some kind of fucking allegory. But Justin, we don't care about this weeb shit. Okay, here's another one. How about the Jerky Boys? If you don't know the Jerky Boys, and I feel like some of you might not, and if you don't know them, you should probably go listen to them because they're funny as fuck. But basically they just put out albums of prank phone calls. I didn't really get into the Jerky Boys until the Napster era, which as someone who grew up in Queens is a little bit of a disgrace, but regardless, their whole discography was there for the taking. The thing is though, in the way that every parody song at that time would get labeled as being by Weird Al, every prank phone call at the time would get labeled as being from the Jerky Boys. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger's soundboard calls were getting labeled as being from the Jerky Boys.
Stop it!
I don't stop nothing, you idiot!
Stop it!
The Jerky Boys were known for pranking people with characters like the over-the-top New York Guido voice of Frank Rizzo, or the over-the-top New York Jewish voice of Saul Rosenberg. And I wouldn't be surprised if most people of the Napster era's first exposure to the Jerky Boys was an over-the-top Indian voice belonging to a guy named Kirpal.
Your daughter come to my house today, and she come on my property, and then she kick my dog, and now my dog needs operation. She kicked.
As you probably expected because of the topic of the video, this isn't really the Jerky Boys. Nor was it Tom Green or Adam Sandler who also sometimes were credited with it. But to this day, a lot of people are still convinced that it's the Jerky Boys, and I think a big part of that is just the way this track made its way around the internet. And further muddying the waters was that you had a bunch of other tracks with other Indian dudes being incorrectly labeled as being another Kirpal track, or the sequel to Kick My Dog. Some of them were by the same guy, but a lot of them were also radio station pranks and things like that. I'd actually gotten this track through email well before I'd ever seen it on Napster. People kind of sent this track around, kind of like a chain email, and then it would also make its way into sites like eBaum's World, completely uncredited as stuff on eBaum's World often was. There were a few different flash animations created for it. The earliest and most popular was done by Adam Letalik for flatplanet.org in 1999. But who actually recorded the pranks originally? It's actually kind of tricky to say for sure. There's a lot of hearsay about this and a lot of uncited sources that I am not comfortable in confirming 100%. Of the ones that don't still say it's the Jerky Boys, they credit it to Travis Hopkins, a teenager from Mississauga, Ontario, Canada in 1993. Although every source seems to point to this name Travis Hopkins, I have not been able to find any way to positively identify that guy for sure. There used to be a Wikipedia page for this track which has since been deleted, but looking at the archive might give us some insight into where this came from. According to the Wikipedia article, the prank call was originally distributed on cassette tape in the summer of 1994 in Canada. At some point, somebody digitized the cassette tape and uploads it, and the rest is history. Now, the thing is, on this old Wikipedia article, everything making these claims had the label citation needed. And frankly, this is the kind of thing that might have been difficult to have a proper citation to Wikipedia standards. It's kind of if you were there, and you know it by word of mouth kind of thing. I do think, however, that it's extremely likely that this prank call originally circulated as part of a cassette tape that contained a bunch of other prank calls. On Amazon and a bunch of other sources, there's an album entitled Kerpal, You Kicked My Dog. The art depicts the original drawing of Kerpal from the Flash animation, and it contains several tracks, both with Kerpal and other characters, including a character named Purpur Sadhu, who is basically Kerpal with a different name. If you listen to the tracks, they're all very clearly performed by the same guy with the same recording quality. And I have no idea if this album has any connection to the original person who recorded it. The fact that the copyright is attributed only to Canada Incorporated, to me, is evidence that this is just most likely a random person trying to cash in on it, but I don't know for sure. Either way, the consistency across all of the tracks on this album tells me that they did most likely originate from a single source. A source that was very obviously inspired by the Jerky Boys. Hey, it's me from the future, and while I was editing, I gave these tracks another listen, and I'm not as convinced now that they're all the same person and that they all come from the same source, but I do still think there is some consistency among most of these tracks, and I do still think that it's likely that they all did come from some sort of, independently distributed mixtape. If it does, in fact, exist, perhaps one of you owned a copy of one of the original Kerpal tapes. If you did, I'd love to know more about it. And finally, probably the most famously mislabeled Napster track, The Legend of Zelda Song by System of a Down.
Link, here come to town, come to save the Princess Zelda. Got it put away, now the children don't play, but they will when Link saves the day. Hallelujah!
Now, Surge from System of a Down probably has one of the most distinct voices in that type of music, especially considering the sound of all the other nu metal bands that they came around with. And the person who sang the Legend of Zelda song very clearly sounds a lot like Surge. The track was sometimes also labeled as being by Mr. Bungle, but clearly the person on the track sounds like Surge, realistically sounds like a person doing an impression of Surge. And a lot of people really did believe this was System of a Down. And if we listen to this old clip of Loveline from 2002, it's clear that System of a Down got asked about this a lot. In this clip, Shavo knows what this guy is about to ask before he even asks it. Like, listen to it.
Zach?
Hey, what's going on?
You're 18, what's up?
I just want to say, mad show. It's a great show.
Thank you.
If you were a king, it'd be very cool.
Thank you.
But my question is for System of a Down.
Here they are.
Okay. My friend, he brought a CD over to my house that was basically a bunch of illegally acquired songs.
Uh-huh.
And
Zelda?
The Legend of Zelda theme came
Wrong.
up here.
It's not ours.
And he said, this is System of a Down.
It's
I was wondering if it was really you.
I knew he was going to bring it up. Did you hear me say Zelda? Okay, clear it all up. Legend of Zelda song on Morpheus or on Kaza or on any of those download programs is not us. That is not our song. We did not do that. That's someone who is trying to sound like Serge, and it's probably some kid in his room with one of those new computer programs writing a track and releasing it as System of a Down. It's not us. The game's cool though.
You can tell that at this point he was completely sick of hearing about this song. But despite what Shavo thought about that, the creator of the song had no intention of deceiving anybody about it. People basically just took the song and ran with it. In truth, the site first began to make its way around the internet because of a site called OC Remix. OC Remix, for those of you who don't know, is a spin-off of the old webcomic Overclocked, and it specializes in remixes of video game music. The Legend of Zelda song was posted on OC Remix on February 19th of 2000, and it was credited to a remixer named The Rabbit Joint. In these days, you couldn't upload directly to the site, you had to submit it to the owners for review. They would then evaluate the songs themselves to make sure that they were up to a certain level of quality. OC Remix's founder, DJ Pretzel, loved this song. It was a no-brainer for him to include it in the site, and eventually because of that, he would be bombarded by people throughout the years who would say, actually, this song is by System of a Down, to the point where they had to add a note to the upload. Note: this remix is not by System of a Down, as a few hundred of you have written in suggesting, but by The Rabbit Joint, as indicated. Please don't mail me. I've checked with The Rabbit Joint and verified with 24 hardcore fans on Sode's website. The song has been incorrectly labeled as being by Sode by someone who then perpetrated the error by sharing the file on Napster. Case closed, smiley face. The Rabbit Joint was actually one of several musical projects by a musician named Joe Plyman. Joe had been writing music since his childhood and had a bunch of other projects such as Summer Villains and Hip Tanaka, which is a reference to a composer who you might be familiar with from games such as Metroid, Super Mario Land, and Earthbound. And in addition to music, Joe also worked as a professional sound designer, even receiving an Emmy nomination for his work on the PBS program Word Girl. So although he never got the credit he deserved for writing such a famous song, he did go on to have a very successful career. But anyway, that wraps up this batch of mislabeled Napster songs. If you have any other tracks like this that you're wondering about, let me know.
To the Joker, this is just an ordinary frog. But to the rest of us, it's a crazy frog. What's so crazy about him? Perhaps it's that he's got his little schmeckle hanging out for the rest of the world to stare at and he's proud of it. Just look at him making eye contact with you, mouth agape as he's soaking the side of that little schwanz. Perhaps it's the sound he makes. Or perhaps it's the outsized cultural influence he's had, considering that his mainstream popularity springs from a premium ringtone. So for today's episode of Tales from the Internet, let's take a look at Crazy Frog, aka The Annoying Thing. Nowadays, you hear a default iPhone ringtone and half the people in the room reach for their pockets. But it didn't used to be that way. Back into the early 2000s, that MySpace era ethos of customizing absolutely everything to express yourself, of course, extended to ringtones. So much so that the Zoomers in the audience will be surprised to hear that some people actually paid money for ringtones. And in the ringtone economy lies the story of Crazy Frog. But the story actually begins well before that. 1997, Gothenburg, Sweden, the home of In Flames, At the Gates, and as it were, Crazy Frog. A group of young friends had gotten into customizing their mopeds. With all their two-stroke engines firing off, one of these kids, Danielle Gormley, imitated the sounds they made. His friends completely lost their shit. They had never heard something so hilarious, so he went to his computer and recorded his impression to listen to it over and over again. Created a file named tutuktar.mp3. Driven to tears over how funny this was, one of his friends uploads Daniel's recording. It begins to spread across the Swedish internet and eventually reaches a researcher for a Swedish TV show. Daniel was then invited to perform the sound on TV. After the appearance, the file spreads even more, eventually reaching international audiences. It reaches its highest international heights in a pitch-shifted form. Most popularly, the way that I first heard it, and probably how a lot of you first heard it, a little something called the Insanity Test. So the Insanity Test was a website that displayed a Formula 1 race car, and it had 3 steps. Step 1. Turn on the speakers and allow the page to load fully. Step 2. Stare at the picture without laughing for 60 seconds. If you start laughing, consider yourself legally insane. 60 seconds with the sound playing, staring at a Formula 1 race car. Did you pass the test, or are you insane? So the Insanity Test makes its way around the internet through emails, instant messages, and whatnot, goes through the normal meme life cycle, getting super popular for a while and then fizzling out. Although, you know, over the course of several months as opposed to a few hours like memes do now. So this thing's done and forgotten about. But then several years later, in the spring of 2003, we return to Sweden. This time it's an animator named Erik Rönnqvist. Erik was sent the audio by a friend, and he had never heard it before. With his mind completely untainted by Swedish television or the Insanity Test, he's inspired to create something. He wanted to make a character that looked like he would be making that sound. As he would later explain, he wanted to make something funny and he wanted to make something that would go viral. And really, this is one of the only times that someone wanted to make something viral and it actually worked, as opposed to just being an embarrassing flop. This was an embarrassing success. And after 2 months of work in Lightwave 7.5, on October 15th, 2003, he uploads a website and animation featuring a character that he calls The Annoying Thing.
Ding bum dum bum ba dum bam bum ba dum bum bum ba bum 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 ba 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 rim run run ba 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 ba.
He shares it to a forum for animators, cgtalk.com, where it receives immediate praise from Eric's fellow posters, who proceed to share it all over the place, leading the viewers to grow to several thousands a day within a couple months. Eric had gone viral as he had intended. 2004 comes around and Eric is contacted by a representative of the German company Jamba, aka Jamster in the US and some other countries. For the uninitiated, Jamster was a company at the forefront of the emerging market of paid phone ringtones, and their ads were totally inescapable. Just day in and day out, you'd see Jamster's rinky-dink covers of popular songs for your phone, featuring a cast of colorful CG characters, and one look at their overall aesthetic, and it's clear to see why this character would be such a good fit for Jamster. So it makes sense that Eric would eventually describe the Jamba representative who spoke to him as being very pushy. But eventually, the pushy man convinces him to allow Jamba to use the annoying thing to market ringtones. And they would also hash out a separate deal for Danielle Malmadal, the guy who created the sound, after having proven his ownership of the original sound by recreating it over the phone for Eric. But of course, something with the name Annoying Thing isn't necessarily going to be a great marketing tool. So pretty quickly after this deal is struck, they rename it to Crazy Frog, something that Eric actually wasn't very happy about. I didn't care what they decided to call it, but if I had known that this was going to be such a big thing, I would obviously not have allowed them to use that stupid name. It has nothing to do with the character, it is not a frog, and it is not particularly crazy either. Wait a second, if the Crazy Frog is just a regular frog to Eric, that can only mean one thing. In any case, perhaps the name change was the right move, as from this point, Crazy Frog would become a massive sensation, selling an unbelievable amount of ringtones to people who were for some reason willing to pay for that sort of thing. This period in time, there definitely was a type of guy that just wanted to have the most annoying ringtone possible for whatever reason, so Crazy Frog was definitely a hit with those people. And of course, we gotta address the elephant in the room, the dick. We gotta talk about Crazy Frog's dick. For some reason, when Eric was envisioning the type of creature that makes that noise, he imagined it having a little baby dick.
I was in the pool!
Which of course would eventually become a problem, as the Think of the Children crowd didn't want kids to have their minds twisted by the bizarre sight of Crazy Frog's Crazy Johnson. In the UK, several complaints were made to the Advertising Standards Authority about Crazy Frog's dick, claiming that it was inappropriate for children. But the thing is, the commercial was already deemed inappropriate for children because it contained the premium rate phone number. In other words, this thing didn't air on children's show to begin with, so no action was actually taken by the British government. However, wanting to avoid anything that could potentially threaten the bottom line, Jamster blurred and eventually entirely removed Crazy Frog's penis. F in the chat for Crazy Frog's penis. Later, in April of 2005, Crazy Frog would face more serious allegations. Crazy Frog is a scam artist. You see, you're up late one night, drunk as fuck, watching reruns of Tough Crowd with Colin Quinn, and every commercial break, there's a Crazy Frog ad playing 2 or 3 times, and you're like, you know what? That's exactly what I need to spruce up my Motorola Razr phone. So you buy the Crazy Frog ringtone. A month later, you get another charge from Jamster, and you're like, wait, what the fuck? You realize that you didn't just buy a ringtone. You subscribed to a monthly ringtone service. A service that is seemingly impossible to actually unsubscribe from. And in this instance, the complaints were deemed to actually have merit, and Jamba was forced to make the nature of its service clearer. But despite these hiccups, Crazy Frog was still by all standards a runaway success, so I thought, hey, wait a minute, we gotta make more stuff. Well, luckily for them, Danielle Malmadal had all kinds of crazy sounds he was more than willing to perform for Jamba. In an interview with BBC, he spoke of all the amazing sounds he can make. I have lots of sounds, Danielle said. I always tend to imitate a lot of stuff in my environment. At work, at home, with my friends, could be anything, even a door opening. Then, with a combination of and he demonstrates his imitation of the opening of a spaceship's door. One sound he recorded was based on an old Amiga game. It sounds very funny, and I had to imitate it. So, I sent it to a company who would investigate if it could be a hit. Sadly though, the company's reaction was just to wonder if the Crazy Frog had lost it. I just picture the poor guy sitting in a bar and he's telling anybody who will give him the time of day, "Hey kid, remember Crazy Frog? That's me, I'm the Crazy Frog." And he goes off making his noises. It was producer Wolfgang Boss who realized that perhaps there was money in making entire Crazy Frog songs. And for that task, he would collaborate with producer Reinhard Reif, who would sample clips from the original file and cut them into popular ringtone songs and, when necessary, voice the frog himself. At the time they decided to make this song, the most popular ringtone song is Axel F from Beverly Hills Cop, so they figure, hey, you know what? We take Crazy Frog, we combine it with Axel F, we got money here. It was just the logical, most profitable course of action for them. This cover, accompanied by a music video created by Eric Warnquist and his employers Cactus Films, is released on May 23rd of 2005. And in its first week, it becomes the #1 single in 30 different countries. And that was that. The Crazy Frog was a pop star, and between 2005 and 2009, several albums and singles are released, as well as a ton of merchandise and 2 racing games. Despite its success, however, the purely commercial nature of something he had initially made for fun seemed to leave kind of a bad taste in Eric Warnquist's mouth. He speaks about this in an interview conducted in 2012.
I was along for the ride, and I made some money as well, and I understood, of course, that was the point of the whole thing. So, but it was just hard. I mean, it is hard if you have any artistic ambition to take part of a purely commercial circus as this was.
And he was also worried about it being his only legacy.
I was asked one time by a reporter if I wanted it to say Crazy Frog on my tombstone, and of course I don't. As of now, I guess that's what it's gonna say if I die tomorrow. But I hope that will change.
In any case, as with all things, the public eventually grew tired of Crazy Frog, especially with its absurdly ubiquitous advertising that at one point was estimated to have been witnessed by 10% of the British population over 60 times. After the release of his 19-track album Everybody Dance Now in 2009, he just kinda quietly faded from existence, never to be seen or heard from again outside of moments where people would be like, "Hey, you remember Crazy Frog?" That is, at least, until over a decade later, on April 22nd of 2020. Guess who's back? Hashtag Crazy Frog, hashtag new album, hashtag the Crazy Frog official. That's right, Crazy Frog is back. A new album is coming, with Reinhard Reif returning to the project. Although granted, as of me making this video, it's 1.5 years later and no album has been released yet, but this Twitter account is still regularly updated, sharing fan content and posting occasional teasers and updates implying that the album is still actually in the works.
Dorian Gray is one of my favorite bands, but I also have a bit of a complicated relationship with their music. A lot of the albums they've released throughout the years at first fell completely flat for me, but then they would grow on me gradually over time and I would wind up listening to them over and over again until they became my favorites. Take for example Withering to Death. At first to me that was a mostly forgettable album with a few standout tracks. Then after seeing them live at Avalon in New York City for their first US tour, it became an album that I'd listened to repeatedly beginning to end. And I imagine I'm not alone in that regard. You see, while a lot of bands start off edgy and abrasive and over time they become a lot more accessible and poppy, Dorian Gray really had the opposite trajectory, with more dissonant sounds and experimental elements being added over time. And this evolution made it ripe for a particular hoax track that I talked about in my mislabeled Napster files video. The infamous track known as Sea of Retards. Although this track managed to fool a lot of people for several years, it very clearly was not Dorian Gray. And in my video, I suggested that perhaps this was someone's way of mocking the direction the band had gone in. Well, as it turns out, I might have been wrong about that assumption. Recently, I was contacted by someone claiming to be the person who created this track, and while yeah, anybody can claim anything on the internet, I feel like his story is plausible enough that it merits hearing out. So for this video, let's take another look at this infamous fake Dorian Gray song. I never really expected to have an update on this particular story. In fact, I hadn't even considered the idea that the person who made the track might have seen the video. If you haven't already, I suggest watching my video on mislabeled Napster songs first, but to summarize, there's a track entitled Sea of Retards that was attributed to the band Dorian Gray. And it spread from Napster and other file sharing services all around the internet, with many people believing it for over a decade. So a week ago, I get an email from a guy claiming to be the person who made this song. And I get a lot of emails like this pertaining to stories I've covered in the past. A lot of the time they sound like bullshit or a person that's just looking for attention or something like that. This one though didn't really have any of the red flags that tipped me off to that, and while there is no proof that this is the true story, it does seem like something that's extremely plausible. The email came from a 39-year-old man who did not want to be named because he didn't want the attention and he finds it kind of embarrassing. As he put it, "I think that I would care less if the only song that I ever created that became famous in any capacity used the R slur." The email goes as follows. So, about 20 years ago, give or take, I spent a lot of time online. Like dangerous amounts of time online. I, like many others at the time, was too young to have much money, so AOL discs with free minutes/hours were how I got most of my access in the early days. I got an old disc from Excite with time on it, and they had a chat program called Virtual Places Chat, VP for short. I loved chat rooms at the time, and VP was unique as the chat rooms were overlaid on web pages, and you had an avatar to represent you that you could move around the page. It made things interesting as any web page could be used as a chat room, and myself and one of my friends, been friends since we were 3 years old, became obsessed with basically just being trolls on there all the time. We eventually ended up living in one chat room called The Usual Restaurant, which apparently was an anime chat room. However, my friend and I weren't fans of anime, so I don't know how we got there. And now this is one of the details in this email that to me helps sell it a little, make it a little bit more plausible. Although I never used Excite or Virtual Places, when I was looking into it, I did manage to find people who were looking back nostalgically at the chat room, The Usual Restaurant. And these same people also had an interest in anime and Japanese culture, so at the very least, what he's saying here is true. The email continues. "We made friends there and were so fucking edgy. Like, I am seriously embarrassed of what a little fucking monster I was at the time." One of the people in The Usual Restaurant was a big fan of Dorian Gray. This fan's handle on VP was Norn, and they were dating one of my best friends in the chat room at the time. Norn was nice enough, but pretty quiet from what I remember in the main chat. We would talk a lot more on ICQ, and after a time we got closer and had more personal conversations on there. One day, either myself or one of my friends found Fruity Loops, probably pirated, and we started fucking around in there. And this is another detail that to me lends itself to the authenticity of this story. Because I remember very specifically at this period of time in the early 2000s, people just kinda stumbling across Fruity Loops, not really being into music production, but being like, hey, I guess I'll fuck around and make something. And this track emerged at the time when Fruity Loops was still Fruity Loops, before they had to rebrand themselves as FL Studio because of a lawsuit from Kellogg's. He continues, "I was always a musical kid, but I never really got into songwriting or anything like that. I was big into industrial music at the time and thought, man, maybe I can do something with this. I couldn't. One thing I could do though was find ways to use it to be super annoying. The first Dorian Gray song I wrote, I just titled Secret Song. It started off purposefully quiet, my hope being that Norn would turn the speakers up, and then started into a triple volume mashup of fucking circus music, Hitler speeches, and the most outrageously loud air raid siren I could find. This completed the troll. Essentially, this was a screamer custom made to fuck with one specific person. I messaged Norn via ICQ and told him I'd started listening to Dorian Gray and was really into it. I asked him if he ever heard Secret Song. He said no, and I sent it to him via ICQ. Keep in mind, this is still dial-up days, so it took forever to send it to him. It was so hard to wait, but I was rewarded when 30 plus minutes later, he messaged me back and said, "I hate you so much." Worth it. I told my friends about it and they thought it was hilarious, so another day I was at my friend's house and we decided to make another Dorian Gray song to troll this person with again. I can't place if Sea of Retards was definitely the second song we made, but I have distinct memories of sitting in my friend's basement, recording ourselves making terrible voices into a jank microphone, and spending hours laughing at ourselves making Sea of Retards. All of the track is my voice and my friend's voice saying stupid shit and being sped up and slowed down. I know we sent that one to Norn as well, much to his displeasure. And that got me curious, so then I'm poking around in the Sea of Retards track, speeding things up, slowing them down, reversing them. There's so many layers and so much noise in it that it's really hard to pull out anything coherent. But there's a few things you can dig out and hear how their voices might have actually been. Like that thing at the beginning that apparently is the best. The best! You have that one really shrill, high-pitched sound that, if you slow it down and reverse it a little bit, it sounds like someone just making a goofy giggle. And then there's one line that I didn't really mess with at all, but I never noticed it. Some guy saying something about a telephone. Maybe someone who knows how to mess with audio better than me can pull these apart better, but I don't even know if that's possible. The email continues. So, how did this all end up on Napster? Well, we had another friend who we met on VP that lived about an hour away. We would also record bad songs with him. My local friend and I would drive from our small town to this person's place and just make bad songs in his basement, or sit around smoking cigarettes and being stupid into the late hours. I went over to this guy's house one night and he showed me what he had done with our Dorian Gray stuff. He had put it all up to share on Napster and was cackling like a lunatic because people were downloading it. And in a follow-up email, he did tell me that the friend who uploaded the song to Napster passed away due to cancer, so RIP that guy. I don't know why Sea of Retards is the only one to survive and hit this kind of cult status that it has. The only way I found out about it was I worked with someone whose girlfriend was a huge Dorian Gray fan. I told him about my stupid fake songs my friends and I made and he was super shocked. His girlfriend came in and he told her I made it and her jaw hit the floor. I asked her where she downloaded it from and she said she just got it in a large compilation of their stuff. And to be honest, I feel like I remember there being like a comprehensive Dorian Gray discography that was floating around that did contain Sea of Retards. I started digging around and found forum posts debating whether it was a real Dorian Gray song or not. The dude that put them on Napster even commented on one of the YouTube videos after I told him about it and basically told a very truncated version of this story. But I can't find his comment anymore. The biggest hurdle I have at this point is proof. I literally don't have the original Fruity Loops files or MP3s anymore. That hard drive died a long time ago. At one point I even put them on a CD to try and keep them, but fuck man, that's almost 20 years ago at this point, and who knows if that CD even survived, let alone where I put it. I tried to hang on to that hard drive just in case it could be recovered, but I doubt it could have survived this long with this many moves. This is the real story of it though, so you were partially correct. It was made as a troll. Honestly, I never even listened to Dorian Gray till much later. If it wasn't fucking Skinny Puppy adjacent, I didn't give a shit at that point in my life. And there you have it, possibly the true story of Sea of Retards by Dorian Gray. If true, it's really amusing to me that this song, this track that became a part of this band's lore for decades, and fooled tons of their fans, wasn't even, as a lot of people, myself included, believed a way to mock the direction the band had gone in, but simply as a thing just to troll one specific person. But to me, probably the most interesting revelation from this email, if true, is the existence of other fake Dorian Gray tracks. And that one entitled Secret Song, for some reason that seems to trigger some kind of a memory in me. Like, I want to say it sounds familiar, but at the same time, it's been so long, and memory is so suggestible that I'm not confident in saying I definitely remember this being a thing. I don't know, do you remember something like this? Because this is gonna bother me now. I can picture the series, the lost fake Duran Gray song. Maybe that one doesn't need to be found though. I completely fucking unironically love Japanese rock music. I'm trying to not say let's jump into it like fucking Philip DeFranco, but let's jump into it. Alright, so Duran Gray is an interesting band because if you don't know them, they start like This Is Them. This is how they look. They were produced by the drummer from X-Japan, and they were a Visual K band. If you don't know what Visual K is, it's basically bands that look like this. Jesus Christ, this tiling background with a tiny ass like amount of graphics that just loops over and over again. Duran Gray, DEG, are just about as visual as a Visual K band can get, with the exception of Malice Miser. As can be seen, a very large part of this band is centered around this look. Even though recently they have toned down this look into a more normal hard rock look, they still remain a visual band. However, the image is only part of the band. Duran Gray are also serious musicians, even if they may only seem to be all look and no play. If you forgive the pun. Where's the pun? I don't think this person doesn't know what a pun is, I don't think, unless I completely fucking missed something. It all started in 1996 when they were called Las Sadis. In this group, there was Kyo vocals, Shinya drums, Dai guitar, Kaworu guitar, and Kisaki bass. Kisaki was soon to leave the group and was replaced by Toshiya. With his arrival, the group changed its name to Duran Gray. This name means Gray Coin. I didn't know that. This is like one of my favorite bands, and I didn't know that the name meant Gray Coin. This is what they look like now for comparison. Every time they come to New York, I always go see them. These kinds of bands, when they come to US, it's like this weird junction of like metal culture and weeb culture. So you'll get these kids who are like they come from the weeb side. It'll be a show like this where like you get a ticket. It's not like you need to buy a ticket at the door or something. You get your ticket online and you go. But they'll like line up at the show like 3 days early to show how dedicated they are and stuff. Now I'm looking at this. You know what I would love to fucking find? But I've tried many times. Alright, so Hide, the guitar player from X-Japan, he died. It was like a very tragic thing. Like they didn't know if it was like a suicide. It was like it might have been like an accidental suicide or something like that. There was this girl on, I believe it was LiveJournal or some shit like that. She would dress up like him, and she would tell people that she was, even though she was like an adult, she would tell people that she was him reincarnated but not born as him, like he died, and then his soul went into her, this white girl from Middle America, and she would like send Yoshiki Studio faxes and shit. It's one of those fandoms that attracts those kinds of people. Visual K literally means visual style. It was a movement almost solely started by X-Japan in the late 80s, which peaked in the mid-90s. It has been used to describe bands more or less look-oriented, as well as a music style. Let it be made clear, Visual K is a type of band, not a genre of music. However, constant misuse of the word has turned it into a genre straggling between goth rock and metal. Early X-Japan was VK both musically and visually. As they progressed, they moved away from the VK sound into something more mainstream, and also came out with more sappy ballads. I mean, I'm not a ballads guy by any means, but the X-Japan's ballads are pretty good. Early Visual K could be compared to 80s hair bands with elaborate costumes and makeup. The majority of the musicians are male, and many have a very androgynous look. In Japan, VK appeals mostly to teenage girls, but overseas, the number of male and female fans are nearly equal. Even though it is often mistaken for goth, Visual K is not that. Now that I'm like kind of seeing the tones of these things, I feel like we're gonna find the better content if we look for people talking about how much these bands suck. Even though I like them, that'll be the good content. Here we go, visualksucks.livejournal.com. It really does. Admit it. You guys should keep your own opinions to yourself. Honestly, by doing this, you're getting nowhere. You're just gonna anger fans more. Besides, Visual K is a style. Do your research before posting this up. Oh, this is like a LiveJournal group. This is all happening in 2005. I thought Mana was hot, but then I looked under the skirt. Oh, if you don't know, Mana is a dude. Oh, the pillows. They don't like the pillows. Squee. Wahaha. Found this community after noticing anti-visual K was no longer just a text phrase in my interests. I think what charges my hate for VK is that my now ex best friend is such a fangirl of it to the point where she turns average people like Gacht into a god, or Kyo from Dorian Gray into a sex god. Not to be superficial, but with a pug face like that, you're not a sex god. Nice to find people who share my sentiments. Oh, this guy is just like butthurt. His guy's girlfriend likes the guy in the band. Oh, that's cute. That's cute. Hello, I made this community and all that jazz. I used to like Visual K, but then I realized how much it sucked. Because all my friends were like, oh my god, OMG so hot. It was embarrassing. Hell yeah, there's a lot of that back in the day. It's like, oh, I liked it, but then it got more popular, so now like they don't like it anymore. Who else hates it when people who claim to be really into Japanese rock only think that Dorian Gray and Gacht are the greatest musicians ever? I admit to once being a mindless fangirl, embarrassing, and then it hit me. Visual K sucks ass. It's very repetitive. They all look and sound the same. I hate fangirls, especially the ones that are like, oh, they're not pretty enough. I don't think I like insert non-VK band here. Last time I checked, Visual K didn't have balls. Oh, awesome, a group for hating on Visual K. I don't think I could begin to fathom how much I hate the majority of Visual K in one entry point. That's not even including my bigger hate for the fandom. They all sound the same, they all sound like they're giving birth. Anyway, I'll be sure to spread this community around. I myself also own an anti-Visual K community on Last.fm. It's good to see there are communities that share this sentiment. The difference between J-Rock and Visual K. Oh, that's like from a Final Fantasy message board. A lot of females that claim to be J-Rock fans tend to make annoying little blogs about their favorite J-Rock bands. None of which are J-Rock bands, but I've listened to Visual K, like, it's J-Rock. If J-Rock is like the umbrella of Japanese rock, then Visual K would be a part of that. Like, I feel like that we're just gonna, like, the meat of what we find here is just gonna be like elitist music conversations on places like the Final Fantasy forum. Now, I noticed that in these blogs of fangirls that claim to love J-Rock never named the J-Rock band like The Predators or Art School or High and Mighty Color or The Noodles or Acid Man. Anyway, fangirls tend to go for the Visual K artist. While I don't care about this, but yeah, I mean, you made a whole forum on a Final Fantasy message board, so clearly you care at least a little bit. Have you heard of the Argentinian Visual K band from the 90s, Romantica? They're gay neo-Nazis, and I could pull up the link for their sites and videos if need be. Alright, that might be pretty interesting. There's just like, there's so many things going on in this music. Oh. There a little tender part in there. Yeah, this is like, it is so bad. I almost appreciate how... The timing is just so off on everything. Everything is out of time with the drums. Lip syncing is out of time with the actual track. Holy shit. Their videos all look like karaoke. Have you ever been to those karaoke places where that just has a video playing? Oh my goodness. You know, back on MySpace days too. She got a swastika on. Oh, this is gonna be good. Truly crappy Western Visual K inspired music. I remember that forum too. Monochrome Heaven. Disclaimer, this might result in a loss of either hearing, intelligence, or good music taste. And don't take this lightly, you might have to puke later on. Alright, just wait until the keyboard kicks in. You will shit yourself, guaranteed. Yes, they've all got the J-Rock mullet. I can't even shit on it because I had the J-Rock mullet at some point, so, you know... It was a different time. Alright, let's go back to that growl though. Hell yeah, alright. This one's a little bit more what I was hoping to see. Wait, let's get the keyboard. It's like a fucking, like a Steamboat Willie fucking keyboard here. I feel like Romantica still has the title for the best, worst, non-Japanese J-Rock band. Oh, you got the site? Hell yeah, let's fucking do it. If you want your, Romantica wallpaper, there it is. Karen Fox. Birthday, 1977. Zodiac Pisces. Previous musical project. Alright, this is, I want to go through like a pure, like a list of things they like. Interest, Hollow. Oh, this is a conspiracy guy too. Interest, Hollow Earth, Reptile Connection, Flat Earth. He's of course, the Argentinian gay Nazi visual K band is also a flat earther. Message to fans. I don't have fans. I don't want to have them. I hate 99% of human race. Die. Fuck off. Maria Cross. This is not great, but it's better than anything else that's been listened to so far. The quality of the video, though, that's what makes it. Like, with the random fucking... the glitter just over everything when it comes out. Alright, so this person has a TV tropes page. Maria Cross is a solo visual K singer, allegedly of the Oshare K style. Best known for street performance. Oh god. Yo, alright, now we got the good stuff. Oh, alright, so I'm guessing this badly produced song that we heard before is a little bit of a touch of studio magic. Yeah. Yo, how you singing like Sylvester Stallone? Oh my god. Oh, this is like, here's the power ballad. There's a lot of people here, too. That's that sound if you ever played Siren when they eat the fucking alien. this guy kinda talk like that's the Stallone thing going on too. This dude's the dance, oh my god, I gotta get those vocals. This guy sounds like a fucking seal. Today, I have another lost media case for you. This one caught my attention not just because it's a good song, but also because it takes us back to a website that was key in popularizing the most mysterious song on the internet, that being spiritofradio.ca. This one was posted by Peter in August of 2014, and we have this 30-second clip. This song's got a very freestyle kind of vibe, and I love freestyle. My playlists are full of it, and if you hand me the aux cord during a party, I'm very likely to put on Cover Girls or something like that. So you know I gotta find out who made this song so I can find the rest of their music. So for this episode of Tales from the Internet, let's take a look at what we know about this song so far. Today we're talking about an unidentified song that's been tentatively labeled Fond My Mind, based on what one of the lines in the song sounds like. Although the song's been floating around for quite some time, the search for it has gained some steam the past few months. The earliest post on Reddit that I saw about it was created by No Seacrest on r/Lostwave back in December of 2019. 80s/90s song, Nowhere to Run. Red Sector 1. This post links to the 2014 Spirit of Radio post, and this one calls it Nowhere to Run based on the first line that's said in this clip. The lead of this song potentially being by the band Red Sector 1 comes from a comment posted by Corey on the Spirit of Radio post. So, Red Sector 1 was a Canadian band that formed in 1991, and was active up until 1999. Let's compare their music to this clip of the song Fond My Mind. Assuming that this was recorded in the early 90s, I think their first album World Peace from 1992 is the way to go. So this band, Red Sector 1, to me sounds awesome, but at the same time, I really don't hear the comparison at all. As I said at the beginning, the freestyle vibe to me is very apparent in the clip, and when I listen to Red Sector 1, I'm hearing almost kind of a more industrial vibe. Just overall completely incompatible with the clip that we're looking for. And if we go later in their catalog, it gets more upbeat, but still a different sort of vibe from what we're looking for. In his post, No Seacrest noted that he was attempting to contact the band through their Facebook page. And ultimately, in the Discord for the most mysterious song on the internet, he would comment that he did manage to contact them through their SoundCloud. He spoke to a member of the band, Mike Davis, and Mike Davis confirmed that this is in fact not their song. Mike would also indicate that his current projects are Nasty Little Green Man and Surrounded by Spiders, in case you want to check those out. A redditor named Game Monkey Dev made a few threads looking for the song, which would yield some suggestions like Annie Lennox, New Order, Depeche Mode, which once again don't really have the right vibe to me. And of course they're so popular that there's no way that this would just be unidentified if it was one of their songs. It's the same problem that comes up with the most mysterious song on the internet a lot. I think a lot of people aren't particularly familiar with all the different subgenres of old music, so they just kind of want to put it all under this old music umbrella, just the genre of old. But at this point, there really wasn't much to go off of other than people just shooting suggestions into the dark. However, a lot more clues were found when it was realized that Peter, who had posted the song Spirit of Radio, was not the first person to post this online. In fact, someone else had uploaded the song to What's That Song, a website dedicated to identifying music, a year earlier in 2013. This user's name was GSipKoi. Other accounts with the same name would be found, including a Last.fm account that had scrabbled similar music, implying that it was likely the same guy. And as Jay, a user who had popularized the search for this particular song, noted in the Mysterious Song Discord, since What's a Song has a clip cutoff of 30 seconds, and the Spirit of Radio clip was also 30 seconds. At this point, we only had 30 seconds of the song, and the clip cutoff for What's That Song is 30 seconds. Meaning that GSipKoi most likely had only cut it to 30 seconds to reach the time limit and had the entire song. A few attempts to contact GSipKoi were made through the various accounts with no response, but eventually he would respond to Glups. Hi, I got a reply from Gabber, GSipKoi. Thanks for your message. Yes, I'm the same person who posted that song on What's That Song many years ago. I'm happy to know that there are other people interested in it, but unfortunately, I still have no further information about this song, frowny face. I recorded the song somewhere around 1991 or 1992 on a cassette tape. About 10 years ago, I converted all my old cassette tapes to MP3, and that's when I decided to try to identify this song, but I had not succeeded yet. Frowny face. Best regards, Gabber. Gabber would eventually join the Discord and share some more information. Oh, and he would also share the entire 3-minute and 12-second recording. I'm not going to play the whole song for you, but here are some of the key moments that we hadn't heard previously. Now, I'm not the only person to have made this observation, but for some reason, this intro to me it sounds strangely Indian. Like the vocals do not sound Indian to me at all, but there's just something about this that gives me like a Benny Lava kind of vibe. And this right here, I feel like I've heard a variation of this solo in so many different freestyle songs. Anyway, if you want to listen to the full track, it's uploaded to JK's YouTube channel, along with a lot of other unidentified tracks. Gabber noted that the recording was made from a radio station in Brazil named Transamerica. And like the most mysterious song on the internet, this too was part of a mixtape that he had made. When he looked back at the tape, he had noticed that the earliest song on it was Duran Duran's Ordinary World, which was released in December of 1992. This means that contrary to what he had thought at first, this tape was most likely recorded in 1993. He also noted that this song was played on the radio a number of times. He even showed it to family members from Brazil who also remembered hearing this on the radio. And I had also noticed other Brazilians on Reddit saying that they had heard this song on the radio. But that being said, despite this band being played on the radio in Brazil, it's very likely that the band themselves are not from Brazil. He noted that this song was unlike a lot of the music he had heard from Brazil at the time, and this particular radio station was known for playing American and European hits. And several people also noted that the singer of this song doesn't sound like a native English speaker. A lot of people are convinced that the singer is either Italian or French. And to that point, Alan SM, a Brazilian user of the Discord server, gave some context for music in Brazil at the time. I'm Brazilian, so to give a bit of perspective from what I remember from the time I was a kid then, Eurodance was very popular at the time. In southern Brazil where I live, pretty much all the kids I knew listened to it. The artists being played on the radio were mostly Italian or German, but there were a few local artists as well. Freestyle was a big thing in Rio, they called it funk, but it wasn't popular here. If this song was made by a local artist, it would be natural to combine elements of freestyle and Eurodance. Another thing which might be helpful, at the time it was very common for smaller record companies to release compilations of Eurodance songs, comprised of a few popular songs and many unknowns. They would partner with popular radio stations and name the compilations after them. For example, something like the hottest songs from Radio Whatever. It could be that this song was on a compilation like that. He had also noted that Italian music in particular was very popular with Brazilian DJs at the time. To which a user Silberisen added that Italians at the time were churning out such a sheer mass of dance music that the odds are good that this could be a lost Italo track. Meanwhile, Gabber did actually manage to contact Transamerica. None of the DJs who would have been around then were still working for them, but they did direct him to a list of popular songs from each year. This song, however, was not among any of the lists. And in the comments of JK's YouTube upload, another potential lead was raised. This one from a commenter named Randolph who had mentioned he had heard the song too, but on Danish radio. So I might be completely wrong and confusing this for another song of course, but I'm pretty sure this song used to play on the Danish radio station The Voice in the mid-90s, and that a sample of it was used in like one of those radio advertising stingers way into the aughts. The Voice had some kind of connection to Bulgaria and later opened a radio station there. A user named Maximus Vergara found an uploaded broadcast from The Voice, and it definitely sounds like a station that would have played this sort of music. Unfortunately, this particular track was not in the uploaded broadcast. So right now we got a bunch of clues, but no real solid leads. Some artists and compilations have been looked into, but nothing's really turned up anything. My hope with this video is that, like a lot of the recent lost media cases that have been solved by viewers of the channel, that it just reaches a large enough audience that someone happens to just know it. And I've noticed that looking at the demographic information for my channel, one of the top countries that watches me is actually Brazil. So there actually is a pretty good chance that one of you watching has actually heard this song on the radio before too, and maybe you even know what it's called. If you do know what it's called, of course, leave a comment, send me a message somewhere, let me know what it is. But for now, that's all for the most mysterious song in Brazil. I think that's what I'm going to title this one. I'm sure someone's going to tell me there's other more mysterious songs in Brazil, but you know, we got to keep some kind of consistency here. If I told you that Taylor Swift was an active 4chan user, you'd probably call me a fucking idiot, but bear with me for a second. There's been an image floating around the internet that indicates that it's possible that Taylor Swift might have been an active B-tard since at least 2009. Although the theory does sound kind of ridiculous, you have to think, people like you and me, we take privacy and anonymity for granted. A celebrity at the level of Taylor Swift might find it tempting to be able to shed their identity and go on a site and act like a regular person for a bit. So let's break down this Taylor Swift 4chan theory piece by piece. The first piece of evidence on this image is a thread from 2011. Hi B, ask one of the 50 most famous people on the planet anything, except my name. I took this photo the other day and it's a picture of a bridge of some sort. Someone responds, no photographers are that famous, and no one that famous would hang here now. Which isn't really necessarily true. I mean, if you get a chance to observe celebrities in real life ever, you'll probably notice that they're just as glued to their fucking phones, social media, their devices, just as much as a regular person is. Any place that you've been on the internet, there probably have been some celebrities on it. I'm not a pro photographer, that was from my phone. What are you famous for? And where did you get that statistic? I'm famous for being an entertainer. As far as that stat goes, I am being conservative. The income suggests I'm doing better than top 50. Obviously though, anybody can go on 4chan and fucking say anything. I mean, I think there's even been times back in the day when I would go on, make a thread like this, and try to trick somebody into thinking I'm a celebrity or something like that. It's part of the appeal of anonymity. You know, somebody could be lying, but they could be telling the truth too, and that little kernel of truth, it's enough to kind of like pull people along the thread sometimes. And statistically speaking, especially in 2011, I believe that probably would have been accurate, but it's not really proof of anything, it's just like a little compelling thing to add to the legend of this theory. What would you say to Taylor if I could guarantee you she'll be reading it? Anything is fair game, just to be fair. I won't guarantee you she could see this thread right now, but I can guarantee I could show her interesting comments and questions from it. And honestly, I could see someone who has access to Taylor Swift in that kind of way making a post like that to 4chan. Because a lot of times these things are the kind of things that, like, you really want to tell somebody, but you can't fucking tell anybody. So you go to 4chan because there's plausible deniability. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. Sup B, I'm out at a New Year's gala here in Nashville with my friends. Pick related, it's my friends, and it's a picture of Taylor Swift and some dude that I don't know who the fuck it is. What makes this one a little bit more interesting is the fact that Moot, the founder of 4chan and at the time the administrator, he responded, fuck, that would be shitstorm worthy. And while in and of itself that comment really doesn't mean much, it was pretty rare for Moot to comment on anything back in the day. And he had made multiple comments on threads related to Taylor Swift and had been pictured with her a few times. You know, there are some minor theories around that too, like people saying, oh, Moot hooked up with Taylor Swift, which I kind of fucking doubt, but you never know. It could be just a case of him stirring the fucking pot. Sup B, do you like Scottish fold kittens? And it's a picture that's pretty much obviously the top of Taylor Swift's head and her cat. And I know what you're thinking, okay, so someone found a picture of Taylor Swift and they posted it on 4chan, big deal, right? The thing about this particular picture is that I ran a Google reverse image search on it, and I was not able to see a single instance of it appearing before the date that this was posted. That doesn't necessarily mean that it was first posted on 4chan, it just means that if there was evidence of it existing before then, it's gone now. Speaking of Taylor Swift's cat, I think one of the most compelling pieces of evidence in this theory relates to her cat. From a thread on November 6, 2011, Trips names my new kitten. For those of you who don't understand what's meant by Trips, every single post on 4chan is assigned a number. Sometimes people will make gambling-styled threads where the person who gets a certain arrangement of numbers will get to name something, get to choose something, and in this case, Trips would be the first person whose post is assigned a number that has the last 3 digits the same. The person who won Trips on this thread picked the name Meredith. The very next day, on November 7th, 2011, news articles are published. Pick, meet Taylor Swift's new kitten, Meredith. Obviously, this is something that could just be a huge coincidence, and I've seen it said that, well, she picked the name because she's a big Grey's Anatomy fan. There's a character named Meredith. But that could just as easily have been a way to explain it away and keep the 4chan mystery going. The next piece of evidence relates to a selfie posted on September 16th, 2009. Hi B, I'm feeling down. Please make me smile. And the picture attached is a selfie from the nose down of a girl in a white shirt who very clearly resembles Taylor Swift. And the thing about 4chan is if somebody posts a picture of what appears to be an attractive girl's mouth, people are gonna dig around and try to find out what else they could possibly fucking find, and as it turns out, people found something. And like many people who have accidentally exposed themselves to doxing on 4chan, this all relates to what's going on in the background. You know, furniture, walls, that's the kind of shit that people use to figure shit out at 4chan sometimes. And in this case, the walls were also found in a YouTube video that Taylor Swift had posted. But this piece of evidence, as it turns out, is actually bullshit. I did a reverse image search on this picture as well, and as it turns out, I was able to find another instance of it in June of 2009. I was only able to find one instance of it on a Spanish language Selena Gomez fan page, but it's out there. It's out there before this thread was created. So that piece of evidence is not so good. We got another piece posted in 2012 after this theory had gained a little bit of popularity. Doesn't Taylor browse 4chan? Pretty much why I listened to her. I chatted to her once over Omegle. I only told her my first name and I was a bit drunk at the time. I used to go on Omegle with piano and play sad music for people until they clapped. Then they would say I'm a good pianist and I would feel a little better inside. I got to a girl and she was wearing a scarf around her head to look like a mummy. I laughed and she played the Indiana Jones theme. Then she laughed and took the top half off and I waved. She asked why I looked sad. I'd been crying the whole day about my ex-girlfriend. I told her I was tired. She typed, and I asked which country she was in. She said USA. I said I was from Australia and she asked about the kangaroos. I had told them in many places people rode kangaroos to work. She wasn't convinced but had a laugh. I made sure to warn her if she ever visits of the drop bears. I have no idea what the fuck a drop bear is. Help me out, Australians. We eventually talked about relationships and I told her about mine and I admitted I was pretty depressed and drinking a lot. She told me she had problems with guys in her life. I asked her her name and she said Taylor. I laughed and said the Taylor and she just smiled. We talked for a few hours about being sad and dealing with life and 4chan, but I thought it would be weird to give her my contact details. Taylor, if you read this, thanks for the chat. I'm still not 100% okay, but I'm getting there. By the way, ironically, we're back together. Now, once again, this is another case of anybody can go on 4chan and say anything, but you have to imagine that there probably are some celebrities out there that would want to use a site like Omegle and perhaps fuck with people a little bit like this. It all makes me think of that Bill Murray Nobody Will Ever Believe You story where he fucks with people and just tells them nobody will ever believe you. Those stories, they could be true, they could be false, but as it goes in the story, nobody will ever fucking believe you, so what does it matter? And that brings us to the last piece of evidence in this strangely pasted together quasi-infographic thing that I'm looking at here. On December 28th of 2011, Taylor Swift made an Instagram post with the caption, "Nothing quite like a freezing cold wintry beach." That very same morning, a 4chan user posted an image, "Sup B, nothing quite like a freezing cold wintry beach. Also, Rule 1. Rule 1 being don't talk about B, which clearly I'm fucking breaking here, but honestly that shit was always stupid even back in the day. The EXIF data on that image reveals that this picture was in fact taken that same morning. And unfortunately, Taylor Swift's Instagram post is long gone, so we can't really tell what time she posted hers. The allusion to Rule 1 would definitely be a way of saying, hey, I'm here, but I'm not telling anybody, but I know you guys know. It'd be a nice cheeky way of alluding to that if you were Taylor Swift. The fact that the idea of Taylor Swift actually being an active 4chan user became a minor meme of sorts. There's definitely gonna be some people out there muddying the waters, trying to make up more and more posts like this, but that's kind of what reinforces it in some level. Because the more people fuck with it like that, the easier it would be for her to get away with it. So what's the final verdict on all this? It's kind of hard to say for sure. Although none of these pieces of evidence are smoking guns in and of themselves, they do kind of come together to form this picture that makes you think, maybe she's on there. And then you have to look at the time that Moot himself came out and said, the screenshots are all photoshopped and come from an IP that is definitely not her. Now, although that appears to be him coming out and debunking the whole theory, he knows that the IP really isn't proof of anything, and it's strange that he would take the effort, when he usually doesn't post that much, to comment on it at all. Considering how much 4chan content over the years was people lying for the fun of it, it's strange that he would take this opportunity to comment on this specific scenario. In my opinion, as I said before, I think he's doing this because he knows the theory is about him and her, and he's trying to muddy the waters a little bit for his own fucking personal enjoyment. Ultimately, I think anonymous websites like 4chan offer celebrities an opportunity to be private people that they usually don't get to enjoy in real life, so I can definitely see why it would be appealing to them, and honestly, I think it's more likely than not that they're lurking on sites like this or making burner social media accounts just to kind of get a chance to behave like regular people for a bit. It's like fucking aliens, man. They're out there.